Lori, are you there? Lori?
Yes, Lori's here.
Yes.
This is a personal question, but we haven't started the meeting. Does Daniel go to school tomorrow, even though it's Wednesday virtual day?
Sorry, what?
High school?
Yes, as everybody is out, tomorrow is a virtual day for all students K-12.
Yeah.
Who's asking me that? I don't know.
Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. I didn't recognize. I was
It's
far
okay.
away. Yeah, tomorrow is the Wednesday. It's the first virtual day that we've had.
So he stays home.
Yes, but he still goes on. It's just still distance learning, and some of the schedules are condensed a bit.
Okay, but he doesn't go to the high school tomorrow.
No.
All right, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. I was like, somebody's big on.
Oh, there.
Lori, are you there?
Yes. I'm still here. Yes.
This is a personal question, but we haven't started the meeting. Does Daniel go to school tomorrow, even though it's
Oh my.
high school?
Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. It's the live stream. That's
All students K-12.
No.
Don't touch it.
Who's asking me that? I don't know.
I just muted the
Okay,
live
that
stream.
was really
We have the
spooky. I
live
just
stream
want to
playing.
say.
Okay, good.
I thought it was kidding.
I don't see it though,
You didn't ask the question.
Michelle. I don't see it up on YouTube.
And then Lori was there, and then they were playing it back. Lori, so she heard from Dan, Lori, are you there?
And I sit there and I go, I'm still here.
I thought I was here already.
And he was really proud that he really did her, and then when he heard it the second
This
time,
is
it's
not
like,
that one.
it's really
Where is it?
needing a one-on-one.
Hold on.
Oh, God.
Jillian's on.
Michelle, was that normal that we just heard our conversation a minute later?
Michelle, just say it. She's
It's nice to be laughing before we start the board meeting.
I know. Oh, my God.
I apologize for technical difficulties. I'll take full responsibility. No, the microphone will pick you up as long as you speak at a normal tone. This will pick you up.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Right. So we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Board of Education meeting of September 15th, 2020. We are recording this meeting, and if you would mute your phone, that would help us be able to hear everybody until you're ready to talk, and then you can press *6. This meeting is available by streaming on YouTube. The link is on the agenda, which can be found on the district website under the Board Ed tab. We'll start off the meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody will join me in standing to salute our flag. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with
Madam Chairman, can I make a motion to add something to the agenda?
Yes,
I'd like to make a motion, or I don't know if I have to make a motion to do this, but I'd like to motion to add something at the end of the agenda, the discussion of unanticipated COVID expenses.
okay, so Mr. Delia makes a motion to add the discussion of unanticipated COVID expenses, or anticipated COVID expenses?
Unanticipated, well,
What-
either way.
Expenses to the end of our agenda for this evening. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Ed, so that works out if, I second. So Deb Zukowski seconds that motion. There, do you want to speak to your motion, Mr. Delia?
Yeah, I would just like to speak about our discussions last night and make sure that we're all on the same page moving forward with these expenses.
Any other questions or discussion about this motion?
I have a question. Is it going to be unanticipated or anticipated?
Anticipated and unanticipated. How about both?
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have, yes, I see Mr. Boros on the line. All right, so are there any further questions? Sensing none, all those in favor of adding the agenda item?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that's unanimous, including Mr. Boros on the phone, Mr. Delia. Okay. I think we will add that to the end of the meeting, and then if I could ask Mr. Boros, do you have our commitment community statement? Could you read that for us?
I will, thank you. As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Thank you, Mr. Boros. All right, so that brings us to our consent agenda.
I move, let me make sure, hold on. I'm not muted, okay. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes of August 25, 2020, the minutes of September 8, 2020, and the correspondence report.
Okay, so Mr. Delia makes the motion, Ms. Herman States seconds the motion. This is the consent agenda. Anything that needs to be removed, Ms. Zukowski?
I request that the minutes of August 25th, 2020 be removed.
Okay, so let's make sure that we get that at the end of the meeting, because you know me and I'll forget. All right, so removing the minutes of August 25th. So we're approving the minutes of September 8th and the correspondence report. Anything else? All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that's unanimous. All right, and that brings us to our first public participation. The board welcomes commentary regarding items on the agenda. If there's anybody on the phone who would like to address the board, I would ask that you unmute yourself with the *6. Give us your name and address for the record, and then limit your comments to 3 minutes if you could, as well as making sure that you're addressing something that's on the agenda for tonight. Is there anybody on the phone who would like to address the board? Right, sensing none, we'll close out public participation. that brings us to the chair report. So I'd like to start off by welcoming our two high school students. We have Rashiel Jerky. Hello, Rashiel. And Jillian Clord. We'll hear from them in a minute under the student reports, but it's good to see you.
Good to see you all too.
Good to see you too.
All right, and last night, this is, Mr. DeLeo was referring to the Board of Finance meeting that occurred last night. Dr. Rodriguez, Mr. Binkowski, Ms. Vadas, Mr. DeLeo, Ms. Zukowski, and I all attended the Board of Finance meeting last night. I won't go into great detail since this is something that we'll be able to go into as we discuss the last agenda or the item later in the meeting. The Board of Finance reviewed the CIP with very little comment. They also spent a significant amount of time on the non-lapsing fund request from the Board of Education, with all of them ultimately failing. And so we will have to, I think in the past we've sent a letter to the Legislative Council letting them know that the funds be turned over to town. So none of the request was approved. Let's see. I guess I could just summarize that some of the reasons they gave for not approving it were that this was, in their opinion, a new or they were
Michelle, I can't hear anything you're saying.
Yeah, neither can I.
Yeah, I can't hear anything you're saying at all.
Okay.
All I hear is jumble, barely any jumble at all.
Did we change something?
No.
Did you hear me earlier? You can hear me asking questions. Speaker is not working.
Michelle, it's like other people are talking.
Yeah,
It may be getting feedback from that speaker, so why don't we move the microphone closer to you?
This is the microphone.
Oh, it's not that little thing over there?
No, this is the microphone. So
I go into it on my phone and then you can put that next to so that they can hear you.
yeah. If there's the number of
Still can't hear you.
still can't hear us. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
Better? It's the speaker.
It's very staticky, Janice, and it almost sounds like there's a bad connection. It's not like a feedback thing.
Can you mute, just try muting the bottom phone. I'm sure it's not, but just to rule out the easy
Yeah,
ones.
no, it's a constant static, and sometimes the static is so much that it's like a bad connection and it drowns out the audio.
Is that better? Can you hear us
Slightly,
better now?
but talk a little more.
Yeah.
So if I continue to talk now, is that a little better?
A little
Yeah.
better, but that static is still present.
So that's a little better. but the static is still present.
Where's that
We
coming?
should be able to call in and just use our phones to talk.
Yeah, now it sounds like a Wi-Fi connection. It's like, it sounds like there's more than one issue.
Call into the meeting, can you let me know?
Yes.
You're gonna have to-
So Debbie's gonna call in and we'll see if that works.
Then we're all gonna be speaking off each other.
Then we're gonna get feedback.
Unless we can hear that.
Unless I mute this. Hold on one second. Let me mute this.
Okay, now this will work because I use it on the speaker. So you can talk, they can hear the microphone, but the speaker's on.
So we'll pass your phone around to.
Well, for right now, we can just talk.
All right.
I'd have to tell you.
And when you're speaking, I will mute this so we don't hear it. And then as soon as you're done, I'll mute it.
Michelle, ask them if they can hear you.
Dan, Rochelle, Jillian, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle,
Yes, I put it on mine too, to let me in.
Keeps cutting in and out. Like we can hear you for a little bit, but then it goes away.
I think that wasn't Michelle talking though. Michelle,
Yeah?
would it be possible for us to know who's at that meeting? Because we can't see a thing. All I see is an American flag and very, very small figures. I don't even know who's in attendance.
I'm gonna plug this back in so we can hear them.
So I don't know who's there.
So meeting.
Hello.
Yep.
So they want to know who's here.
The folks at home want to know who's here, so Deb Zukowski, Rebecca Harriman Stites, Debbie Lightline, Michelle Fu, Dr. Rodriguez, Tanya Vidas, what? Kathy June, Al Adriani.
Thank you.
All right.
Sounds like that's working a little bit better.
Go ahead.
All right, so where were we? We'll talk about the non-lapsing fund later, so I'll stop talking about that. But I would like our board to start the self-evaluation process again. Normally, we would do that during the summer months, but there was quite a bit going on this summer, and maybe we can get to it now before we get into budget season. That's what I'd like to do. We also need to set budget goals. That'll be at our next meeting, so just something to think about. And then also, we will have a non-meeting after this meeting to talk about negotiations. So don't anybody leave once we're done with the regular meeting. And that concludes the chair report. Are there any questions or comments? No, okay. Sensing none. If I don't notice you if you're on the phone or video, please just speak up, wave your hand so that
Can they I hate to say, can you raise your hand? Just because I have to turn the mute off, so I can't hear them. If they can just raise, and I'll turn the speaker back on before people speak online.
Okay.
What about phone people?
I'll see them unmute.
Okay.
So.
All right, so we'll conclude the chair report and move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Rodriguez.
So can you hear me? I am in the meeting. Yes?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
So now it is into school. I can report with all confidence. For the most part, things are going fairly well, both in the classroom and for all of our remote learners, especially with respect to the connection to their peers and their teacher. I've been around the district. I also went over to the community center and really impressed with what I'm seeing. I honestly think our teachers and administrators have really knocked this out of the park. And those are not my words. Those are the words of a parent that caught me at the community center to tell me so. So I wanted to share that with you. I've also had parents write me emails as I've been around town, pull me aside to give me positive feedback. Again, nothing is perfect, and by no means, that's not what I'm suggesting. But the ability to plan has really made a big difference. Following our reentry plan, I think that was significant. And keeping students interactive and part of instruction has been really positive, even though we're in the hybrid model. We sent you the certified. I also have the.
Mr. DeLeo would like to speak.
Lori, there's like it's like double phone or two microphones now for some reason. A 203 number just came on. I don't know what's going on, but another number just popped up, and I'm hearing you like double, and it's not the same. It's all right now. It's muted. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, now you're good.
Okay. I also sent you the certified staff report update. We do the resignation of what to do. I'm in the meeting.
Did I mute Lori?
Can you hear me if I talk like this? You can. Okay. I don't know where to back up. We've had multiple new hires to fill teaching positions across the district. Currently, we have a Hatta Meadow reading consultant position open, and of course our read music position. But I think all in all, we've really done well, considering there are so many positions out there across many, many districts in Connecticut. And I think the principals have done an outstanding job filling the positions that we've had open. I will also be sending out a communication tomorrow to all of our parents regarding the extension of our summer lunch program called Seamless Summer Option. This is actually through Whitson's. We will extend free lunches to our students through December 31st. And this is a very nice surprise for all of our families. So that communication will be going out tomorrow. I also want to recognize all of our custodians who are constantly working to maintain the buildings, deep cleaning and disinfecting as part of our protocol, part of our reentry plan. I know Bob Gerbert is, I think, one of the members who is on the phone right now. And I will be sending an official letter to all of the custodians thanking them. Again, they've done so much to maintain clean schools and minimize infection spread. They're cleaning bathrooms on a regular basis, as we talked about in our plan. And this is recorded on clipboards, so outside of every bathroom, as you might see in any public building. So they're really doing a fantastic job, and I wanted to publicly thank them for that. I do want to talk more about COVID, but I will wait it because that is an agenda item this evening. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. Are there any questions or comments on the superintendent's report? So, Ms. Harriman Stace.
All right, so I'm back to muting this one again. If you talk loud like Lori did, they were hearing that fine.
Okay, great. I just wanted to reiterate what you said about it being a
wonderful, opening given the circumstances. I have a distance, a hybrid learner from the high school and one from the Reed in my home. And as I said to Lori earlier, it really is just very joyful. They're happy when they come home from school, having been in a school building and, sitting in front of the computer. The teachers are doing an excellent job at keeping the students motivated and engaged. So I couldn't be happier as a parent and a Board of Ed member. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for everyone that's working so hard.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, are there any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. D'Elia?
Dr. Rodriguez, just a general comment. In kind of a personal comment, I've noticed that my son is enjoying himself too. And he's doing cross country, which I think is wonderful. So I just want to applaud everyone on that. I'm wondering, I actually had a question about the lunches and how that's going. I know that we had tents and the kids were eating outside. And if Rachel or Jillian want to chime in on this, that's fine. I just was wondering how the meals are going in the various buildings.
So I've heard no complaints at this point. I know we were in hybrid, so I've made my rounds to all of the schools. And so there are very few students in the cafeteria, especially at the lower levels. We are only working on cold lunches right now, again, to minimize getting in line for the hot lunches. Again, that is temporary. I know the distribution of lunches, that is for all of the pickups for those who are on remote learning. That's going well. I've heard no complaints. I haven't gotten one complaint from a parent. And they do a weekly survey to sign up for that. And now I think this is great that they're going to have free lunches, hopefully until December 31. I don't know if Jillian or Rachel want to talk about the high school and how that's going.
Oh yeah, I can add something about the high school lunch if you guys, can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I know Rachel is in cohort D, so he's all online, but I've had a couple of lunches now in the school, and I personally ate at the tent outside of the senior courtyard mostly now, but I know that people eat outside at New Calf at the tent, and there's one outside of Old Calf too, which I think it's really popular to eat outside right now, and it seems to be going really spread out, and they have security guards checking on the desk shields, which is good, and people have been getting the boxed cold lunch pretty fast, which is also great. And then the cafeterias don't look that crowded, which is surprising for the high school, but I've looked in New Calf a bunch of times and it looks good and people are keeping their distance at the tables. So I'd say I haven't heard anything bad so far, and it's been going pretty good.
Thank you, Jillian.
Yeah, so Ms. Zukowski?
Are there accommodations for students who have allergies? Like if they're allergic to milk or wheat?
Yeah, we've always made those accommodations, so there are students that can't have certain, is that what you mean, certain foods? They will make accommodations for those students. I have to be honest, typically they bring their own lunch because of that. But if a student, for example, is allergic to milk or something to that effect, then they know that in advance, so they make all the accommodations necessary.
And they can find the students and get the proper food.
Oh, absolutely. Especially at the lower levels, they know very clearly what every student needs. When it gets to the upper levels, they do that on their own.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. And that will bring us to our committee reports. I believe there was a policy meeting. No policy meeting. There was a communications meeting. Ms. Zukowski, did you want to tell us what report on the communications committee?
We are looking very forward to putting out a newsletter that is focused on equity and diversity. We had a rather abridged meeting. We're waiting to, knowing that it's so complex getting school going, we need to have time, and the staff needs to have time for us to actually talk, to gather the information with which to write the articles. So we are still waiting until things settle down. Dr. Rodriguez will be making the connections for us, I believe. And the one thing is that since we're so far pushed back, we may not be able to make some of the deadlines that we had set to you previously, but we'll update you on that at our next board meeting.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments? I'm trying to think, was there another, am I missing? No. Liaison activities, did anybody attend PTA meetings? I think John did, but, Mr. D'Elia?
I just want to give you an update on Ed Advance. They had a meeting. John, I'm going to go real quick, okay, John?
Yes, go.
They had a meeting and they scheduled it early in the day, so I'm reaching out to them about their scheduling, because if they're going to have meetings at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, they're very hard for members to attend. So I'm going to reach out and see what we can do about that. And I just wanted to give the board an update that they had a meeting last week, but it was so early that I was still working. And I think in the past, Michelle, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this. I think the meetings were a little later, weren't they?
Yeah, they were always in the evening, so I'm sorry that's happening, but.
Oh, no, it's something that I think I should bring up. So I just wanted to inform the board that I missed the meeting because I was at work, and I'm going to make it clear that I think the meeting should be a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Boros, did you have?
Yes, I went to I attended by phone the Reed PTA meeting last night and listened to the president introduce a number of new families to the community, enthusiastically signing up for offices, and it was my first experience in a elementary intermediate PTA meeting. So it was very refreshing to hear how positive everyone was, and the reports from the principal and assistant principal. That's it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right. Well, I think that's it for liaison activities, and we will add our student high school reports. Mr. Jervy and Ms. Clark, do you have a report to offer to the board?
Yes, so I can begin our student report for the week. So we're really looking forward to presenting you guys with our news and like student perspective from student life at the high school since we just started. So since the year just started, I wanted to solicit feedback from students in each grade to see how each grade was kind of adjusting, like from freshmen to seniors. So most of the freshmen said it was a little confusing at first, which is pretty normal, I'd say, going into high school from the middle school, but easy to get the hang of. They mentioned that the signs in the hallways and link crew leaders helped a lot, which is wonderful to hear from them, especially about link crew, since this year's freshman orientation and link crew program looks a lot different than past years. Like usually we start with an ice cream social and football event before a game, but unfortunately neither of those can happen this year due to the circumstances, so it'll be interesting to see what we do instead. Our first meeting for Link Crew is next Wednesday, so I can report back and find out what future events we do have in the next. And then for the sophomores, most said that for the circumstances it went well. They said it's still figuring out the new schedule, but classes have been easy to follow. Some juniors mentioned that the NHS staff members have demonstrated a great amount of help and effort into trying to maintain social distancing protocol. Something that a senior said was that it was really nice to see people in school, since that was really missed at the end of last year. That was just a sampling of what people said, but overall the feedback is that most of the protocols are going well. The desk shields are definitely going to take some getting used to, but it also seems that teachers have adapted pretty quickly to the Google Meets and like online technology, which I think is awesome. And that's it for the feedback. Then for fall sports, all teams have begun practicing. No games yet. We're still waiting for some final adjustments to the schedules, but most games are scheduled to start in the beginning of October. And also, the Unified Sports Program just announced that they will be having their Unified Soccer team this fall, and the start date is still to be determined. And we weren't able to have it last spring, so it's great that they can kick back up this fall. So for some clubs, I wanted to see how they were reorganizing to accommodate for COVID protocols. So I spoke with the National Honor Society president, since we have such a large group of society members at the high school. And under normal circumstances, the Honor Society holds events and like charity fundraisers during this time. And the president, I reached out to him, Chase Yeton, for insights. And he said that they're currently holding meetings remotely and hoping to still have a typical induction ceremony this fall. Instead of community events, the concentration is on drives as they are safe, and with a large group of members, the Honor Society is hoping to attract many contributors so they can support the community groups that are more in need. And finally, they're exploring the opportunity to serve as a tutoring group for the entire school community, all grades, not just the high school, since distant learning creates struggles for many students. Specifically, he said, the goal of this school year is to get the best education we can, and as the National Honor Society, we would love to be able to help students of all ages learn whatever they need help with, as well as assist in time management in these difficult times. Despite the pandemic, we are going to find ways to represent and help the community.
Hey everyone. So as you heard from Jillian, the school year has been going fairly well so far, and students and teachers seem to be getting acclimated pretty quickly. Unlike Jillian, I'm actually in cohort D, which if you don't know what that means, I'm staying home all days of school and I'm only doing remote learning. And I've been in contact with some people who are also in cohort D, but first I'll just tell you what my personal experience has been. So at first, it can be expected. It was a bit rough. Teachers and students were kind of unfamiliar with what to do exactly, but within the first couple classes, that pretty much went away. I thought teachers are doing a really good job in figuring out how to teach effectively in both school and online. And it's kind of like they're not teaching the class separately from us. They're teaching all of us at once, which I thought is really good. And for along with that, they're doing a good job providing us with supplemental videos, which we can use for extra help. I talked to someone, and my opinion isn't the only opinion on this. I talked to someone who's in my grade and in several of the same classes as me, and he thought that cohort D should be taught asynchronously instead of at the same time as other classes. And what he meant by that wasn't that it shouldn't have a separate class period, but he felt that cohort D students should not have to telecommute, and teachers should just give the work to cohort D students and they should do it similar to last year. I personally disagree with this, as I feel like the online teaching is helpful and helps with the structure of each day. For now, I'll continue to contact other people from cohort D as I see who else is doing it, and I'll report back next meeting.
Also, I have a couple more things, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So now that everyone can come in late and leave early, if they have a free period, like all grades, and not just the seniors, a new senior privilege was added this week, and seniors can now leave during the long lunch period if they have it free and come back for their last period class. So all they have to do is sign out at the front desk and sign back in when they return. So if they have period 3 free on day 1 or period 7 free on day 2. And then this Thursday is the open house at the high school, but this year it'll be all virtual. So it'll be interesting to see how the meets go for all the teachers, and I can report back on how anyone says it goes. And then finally, as the year progresses, we will bring more updates from Link Crew, the Honor Society, and other clubs and sports. And if anyone has any questions or anything else they would like Rochelle and I to report on in the next meeting, we are open to suggestions.
Great, thank you. So we do have a question, Ms. Zukowski.
Yeah, if you have any contacts, it would be really interesting to see how the arts students are doing. Music students, dance students, artists, and give us a feel for their experiences too.
Sure. I heard some things about band and how they're separating into groups, but I can look more into other arts as well and report back on that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, I don't see anything. You know, it's really neat to hear the perspective of not only from yourself, but also your peers and hear what you're hearing from them. Bring that to us. It's really important for the board to hear that. And so traditionally, we would welcome you to stay for the meeting. We would really enjoy having your participation with the discussions that we have as a board.
We didn't hear anything you just said there.
Nice and loud.
Oh,
Here we
there we
go.
go.
All right,
So
we would welcome you to stay for the remainder of the meeting and participate in the agenda items that we have coming up. It would be great to hear from your perspective. We also understand that if you have work that you need to get to or you need to go, that's fine as well. So thank you for your reports. We really appreciate the perspective and look forward to more.
Sure, thank you.
All right, so that brings us to our financial report. So I will entertain a motion on that.
I'm getting it.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the month ending August 31, 2020.
Okay, Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Ms. Harriman States seconds the motion. What would you like me to do?
There's a tech issue that when we're using the phones, if we are not using our teacher voices, it's doubling because we can't turn this microphone off. So they're hearing you double, even though we're not hearing that. So when we're using the phones, they're muffling everything for them. So I can't turn this mic off.
So it's better to just speak.
And it's better just to use your teacher voices and talk nice and loud.
I will do so. I will do so.
Thank you. Use your microphone training that I gave you.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the financial report. You have, I think we have a report on the screen. It's on the long, and if you want to cue when we need to see what page, that would help.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I'll try my best to project.
I can't hear a word.
Nobody's saying anything, so that's perfect. It's actually working now. All right, so here we have the financial summary.
Okay, I can read. All right, good evening, everybody. So the second period financial summary continues to have limited information at this time, as we are still in the process of encumbering expenses and reallocating all the salaries. For the month of August, the BOE Board of Ed spent $2.9 million, of which $2.1 million was on salaries and the remainder on all other expenses. There were 3 emergency repairs for the month. Pettit Meadow had a pipe leak in the heating main that required a replacement cost of $6,750. And a week before school started, the Reed intercom had to be replaced due to a power surge from a thunderstorm. That cost was $16,876. And also at Reed, both chillers required replacements of components as the chillers would go down routinely, causing alarms to go off. The cost for that was $17,322. So I know it is early in the year, but we are already seeing some pressure points on our budget in areas of plant and tech equipment, as I'm sure you've already noticed. You can turn to page 4 of your financial summary report. You'll notice that the plant supplies already has a negative balance of $106,073. And on page 5, you'll see that the tech equipment line has a negative balance of $104,441. Now, these negative balances are directly to the COVID pandemic. So I'm sure we'll discuss more of that as we go along. And, you know, it's very early in the season to be looking at this report. Next month in September, I hope to bring the board more of a detailed report that will have information regarding expenses and other areas that might be of concern, such as accounts that we'll be watching closely, the nurses' salaries, building subs, para hours, custodial overtime. We have a variety of areas that we need to watch this year. So I think next month, when I present the September financials, I'll have some additional detailed information.
Great, thank you. First report. Are there any questions or comments from board members? If there are, you'll have to speak up because I can't see you right now.
I have a question for Tanya I'm sorry, Mrs. Vot. Am I saying this right, Tanya? Mrs. Vadas?
Yep, that's correct.
I have a question. May I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. D'Elia, yes.
Mrs. Vadas, last night at the Board of Finance meeting, one of the members of the Board of Finance kept on referring to a surplus of $56 million in July. And I'm just wondering, now I see we show a surplus of $15 million. And I was wondering if you could just explain why we're showing big surpluses at the beginning of the year and when the board can expect to see more of an accurate reflection of the expenditures and the projected surplus or deficit.
Dan, thank you for that question. First of all, I really would like to caution against using the term surplus, especially this early in the year. As it's been past practice, in July, we haven't even begun encumbering all of our expenses. Once that happens, which typically takes place in September, October, this balance will be reduced. So this balance of $15 million it's not real right now. We are still encumbering expenses. We are reallocating salaries. There's a lot to do in the beginning few months of the year. So I would say October, everything should be in. And that should be a good balance to look at that time.
So if I'm understanding you, may I continue?
Please.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, referring to a surplus at this point in time, it's just not a prudent practice because you haven't encumbered everything, and we really should caution anybody using any type of bottom line numbers at this point in time. Am I correct in my statement?
That is correct. July is a very difficult month. Everybody's, there's so much going on in July. And like I said, it's been past practice to not have any anticipated obligations or encumbrances in at that time. This is something that I might look at next year to change because as it was brought up in the Board of Finance last night, and it was mentioned that it was a surplus, that's just not a good thing to get out there because we do not have a surplus.
Thank you very much for helping me clarify that.
Okay, are there any other questions on the financial report? Seeing none, we can take a vote. All those in favor of approving the financial report? Aye. Is Mr. Boros? Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. All right, so that brings us to our presentations, and I thank Mr. Adriani for staying with us and invite him up to the vast table that we have. So I know, or I believe we have Fred Hurley and Kathy Quinn attending remotely. And so I'd like to welcome them all. I asked Ms. Quinn if they could join us to share with us the mission of the Sustainable Energy Commission, give us a little bit of history of the projects that they've worked on with us, and just sort of make sure that we're all on the same page and we're aware of all the good things you're doing for us.
Sure, and I'm Alan Adriani from the Sustainable Energy Commission, actually the vice chair, so I'm helping Kathy out because she obviously couldn't be here tonight, but she's on the phone. So you can go to the next slide. I'll give her, I don't know if everybody knows what the Energy Commission does, so I'll give you a brief overview of who we are, what we do. So we're, I don't know if you can read that, so I'll read it for you. You know, we're a group of 9 members, individuals with diverse backgrounds. We have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, environmental engineers, and other people who have interest in, environment itself. So we're a pretty diverse group of people. We support town officials, employees, help identify, energy, renewable energy sources, energy efficiencies, energy conservation programs. We also identify and implement support renewable energy use, energy efficiency, and energy conservation programs in which Newtown residents and businesses, organizations, and the town agencies can participate in. So that's what we do. So we're here to give you a brief overview of, how do we help Board of Ed with energy. And so I put up a first slide, how do schools use energy? And some people may or may not know, but there's a pie chart up the right, which gives you 100% of how the school can use energy, whether it's computers, lights, heating, air conditioning, hot water, other uses. I think I said computers already, cooking, kitchens. But the biggest part of that pie is HVAC equipment, all your heating, air conditioning, ventilation, which accounts for roughly 66% of the energy consumption in a building, which is substantial. And the lighting counts for 14%, and hot water heating accounts for 7%. So when we walk through schools and look at energy uses, we look at those types of equipment as the big hitters to save energy. Go ahead. So how can we save the school's energy? I talked about HVAC equipment, lighting, hot water, but it goes beyond that because you look at the building envelope itself, you look at windows, you look at roof. If you're going to add a roof, you put insulation in because that will save the energy cost over a long period of time, but you'll recoup it back pretty quickly. Windows such as like Middlegate, I know it's on the CIP to put them in. You want to look at putting good windows in and then sizing all your HVAC equipment with the new windows. Because if you size it the other way, you actually oversize equipment, you'll use more energy. So there's cautions on how you proceed and how to do design. We also look at lighting controls. There's a lot of buildings. This building actually has doesn't have the LED lights. So the utilities in this Reed school is actually pretty high when you compare to the middle school and Middlegate. In the high school, we just put LEDs in as well. We look at different control strategies. Sandy Hook School actually has a state-of-the-art control strategies that actually control all your heating and cooling based on schedules. So you can set back, temperatures at night, you can ramp it up during the day, and actually conserve energy that way. We look at variable speed drives, building management systems, which I just spoke about. And we've looked at boiler upgrades. chiller upgrades, and then we do a lot of solar work as well. And then we also we're going to get into looking at demand response. And demand response is a part of the bill where if you're using a certain amount of energy and they look at 15-minute increments, and they'll bill you on demand of your electric bill, which actually be a significant portion of your electric bill. And we're going to look at that to see if we can catch when certain peak demands are to reduce the energy bill. So I don't know, Fred, you want to chime in on anything with that? Let's see if we get Fred. Maybe he's on mute. Can they hear me?
They can hear you.
He has to do *6.
Fred, push *6. There we go.
Somebody press stars.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, that's great.
Okay. Yeah, it's usually pretty hard to shut me up, so I'm impressed with the technology. Yeah, the whole demand issue is interesting. It's really a money saver if you get it under control. It's not necessarily a direct savings of energy, but what it comes down to is it's a result of managing the use of the energy in your building on a 24-hour basis. That if you can avoid an errant peak, that's good, because what happens is the utility will charge you the value of that peak for the whole year. So you're paying a penalty for one bad day when your building used too much energy. It's not really unfair, because the utility will argue they have to have the capacity available for that one day. So control of demand, it's a matter of the operation of the building. And things like how you can stagger various HVAC equipment on and off to try and flatten out your curve. That's something that is not resolved over a short period of time. We're going to be working on that for really a couple of years. But it's a program worth doing. We've made some monies already in some of the schools. At Sandy Hook School, for example, because we put new solar in down there, we get an ISO, and that's the independent system operator gives us a check because we've bought more capacity online. We have the same thing for Reed School. So there's a couple of programs like that help us either generate cash or reduce costs. They're not all necessarily in and of themselves direct energy savers, but it certainly helps with the budget. Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Hello? Oh.
We got a question, Fred.
Yeah, I usually don't put people to sleep, but I think you get the point on that. It's a program worth following. Again, it's not going to knock off your energy consumption by 20% or anything like that, but it helps you to bring your building under control, and that's probably the real benefit.
Question?
Mr. Kowski has
There's a question from Deb Zukowski.
Okay, when you talk about peak energy, is that
Yes.
absolute use or is it net use? So if a building has solar panels and it's a hot, 97-degree day, is the energy based on the total energy minus the energy provided by the solar panels, or is it just the total energy?
It's whatever the peak usage is that day. The solar panels on a hot day, for example, would generate a lot of power. That would probably help you indirectly to keep that demand curve down, because the grid would not be requiring as much energy, because the solar panels, in fact, would be providing that. At other times of the year, and say the solar panels aren't as effective, you're just as likely to get a spike because a motor ran improperly, or for whatever reason, a bunch of pumps came on all at the same time. So it in a sense, it's the maximum net usage that particular day, I think, is what you're looking for.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that, or we want to go on?
I think we can go on.
Yeah.
All right.
So some of the benefits, obviously, if you get your equipment running right and well, you reduce the maintenance costs, you reduce your CO2 emissions, and obviously lower utility bills. All right, next slide. So energy upgrades that have been done here in town. Middlegate, we put a natural gas line in. We've added air-cooled boilers, which are condensing boilers, are high efficiency. And we've added LED lighting. The middle school, they've added the gas line, they've added Beastman condensing boilers, and there's been an LED retrofit throughout the entire building. Hawley, they've added the LED lighting throughout the interior of the building. They replaced the parking lot lights and wall packs. And the steam boilers have also been replaced with the high condensing air-cooled boilers. Good. Next slide. They're typing. So I pull up some data from, we have actually an Energy Star portfolio manager. We can actually track all the energy usage for every building in town. So I figured I'll give you an example of Middlegate School. You can see here, the orange line, this is the energy usage kilowatt hours from 2010 roughly to 2016, having high peaks. And we saw LED lighting around 2017. You can see how the energy usage has actually come down. So continuing on the high school, we added new air-cooled boilers, the main building, which included water tanks for water heating, hydraulic heat pumps, circulating pumps, and lights throughout the entire building as well. And I've seen Hook up here, you probably know why. I've seen Hook is a new school, but back in 2019, 2018, we were approached, I don't know by somebody, but Catherine was approached on the energy bills being very high at Sandy Hook. And actually, when I looked at the bills, they were the third highest in the district. And I was shocked because this is a lead building. It's supposed to be the lowest energy use in the town. It was the third highest. So we met up with Gino, and we actually walked down the building at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we actually found there were multiple issues. The first issue we found is we actually walked down the hallway. I said, what's that noise? It was kitchen hood fan. It was on. It was on 24/7. So not only do you have the energy consumption of the fan running, but you're sucking all the air from outside. You got to condition it to keep the building or cool the building for the season. We actually, when we walked through the building, we actually found that they had a boiler control temperature. So the boiler is running at a very low temperature. So it calls all your pumps to run full out, and all your fans to run full out. And on top of that, because of that boiler control issue, they couldn't do night setback, but they actually set the building back to a lower temperature. They left it at 70, 72 degrees, 24/7. So we identified these issues. We went back to the control contractor, helped to fix the schedule, and we, based upon the original design condition, the energy usage for that building should be roughly 80,000 per year. We were 210. I think it was 210, but it was $125,000 a year in savings and operational costs. I want to send a thanks to Todd Kerber because we were trying to work with Gino to fix the VFD feed stand controller for the kitchen hood, the parking lot lights controller. And when Todd came on, he was able to adjust those items, which brought down the energy usage more. So the next slide actually had the energy usage. And the blue line here is actually a kilowatt, the actual power consumption, kilowatt hours. And the orange line is your how much you save over the prior year. So the zero in the center, if you go negative, you're actually consuming more energy. You can see in 2017, the building's already been open a year. The orange is coming down, which means you're consuming more energy compared to the year before, which takes several peaks down. And then we come in over here, and that's when we looked at the energy usage and all the issues with the building. And you can see how much the energy usage come down, and the orange line goes up. We got roughly 20 to 50% energy reduction for the previous year. So this is the type of things that the Energy Commission can help you guys out. And here is where the parking lot lights were fixed, and you can see the consumption came down another 10-15%. So thanks a lot. Another quick one note up here, you can see there's some large peaks up here. It appears that the chiller was not being properly maintained, which Bob identified when he came on board. You can see the usage during the month of August, the month of August, the following year, significantly come down. Here's some solar data. I'll let Fred talk to this one. Fred?
Yes.
You're on for the solar.
You want me to do all the PV systems, or we'll do the virtual net metering, or both?
That's up to you.
I guess. Okay. I'll do the whole thing. One of the things we started a number of years ago was looking at solar systems, the well-known panels that you see on Reed School and other schools. The other half of that approach, however, was something called virtual net metering. It's where a solar farm is set up and we become the guarantor taking of that power. We get credit for that solar power. Just like you buy the commodities of natural gas or oil, electricity now is a commodity. By taking advantage of the state program, working with Eversource, what happens is that we have already bought online 4 megawatts of solar power that is credited to the high school and 5 of the other schools in the system. The last school that will come online, we have another 1 megawatt solar farm pending. When that gets approved by the state, at that point, all of your schools will be covered by virtual net metering. What that does, it in fact puts solar power into the grid. And as I said, it's like a commodity. And even though those virtual net metering fields are not directly linked to your schools, you still end up getting a credit for that solar on each one of the schools that's listed as an offtake for that power. So it's a combination of the direct solar on schools like Reed and Sandy Hook and the middle school and so on, plus the virtual net metering fields that we have. In some cases, we have both direct and indirect solar on buildings, wherever we have both. What it really means is that of the roughly 6.5 megawatts of generation power that it would take to provide the electricity for the school system, you're going to be somewhere in the low sixes, 6.3, 6.2 megawatts of generation power that's going to provide over 90% of all the electricity in all the schools, and about the same number for all of the public buildings in town. Obviously, that's a significant achievement. In terms of how that, for example, affects reduction of your carbon footprint, if 45% of the energy usage in your schools generally is electricity, and that's about what it is, it means that we're going to be basically reducing your carbon footprint by about 42%. So those goals that people have talked about, reaching these very large reductions in carbon, you're doing it now. And they're obviously attainable. And for the most part, none of you even knew that it was going on, because a lot of it was done through third-party investment and long-term contracts for the offtake of power. So I think we've done a pretty good job of bringing the school system into the solar age convincingly, and also obviously kept the cost under control. And it will be providing dollar savings in the school budget as all these systems come online. That should spark a few questions.
Is that, I know, Mr. Hurley, you can't see the picture on the screen, or maybe you have it at home, but is that Reed School in the bottom?
That is Reed School.
So there are panels on every single.
That's facing southeast.
Yeah, wow.
You can't see the back half of the road.
And where are the fields that we have in town?
So there is one field at the landfill, and there's two. Fred, where are the two fields located? One was in Town.
It's in, actually it's Volunton Road, but they're located in Griswold, Connecticut and Hampton, Connecticut. We have 2 megawatts online in Griswold, Connecticut, and we have 2 megawatts online in Hampton, and we have a 3rd megawatt coming online in Hampton, hopefully fairly soon.
If you go to the next slide, that shows where the additional fields are and where the virtual net metering credits go to.
I do want to add one thing on this, that even though we can get very close to 100% replacement of our electrical usage by alternative energy, the effort on this never stops. The more that we can reduce our consumption in the schools, the closer we can get to that 100% mark. Over time, all of these systems, all these solar systems, on an annual basis lose some capacity to generate. So our work is not going to stop. It's going to continue to try and reduce and make more efficient our actual consumption. At the same time that we're working on that, the capacity for generation drops, and by that plus doing the continuing effort, we can try and keep in well up into the 90s and close to that 100% mark, and for many years to come.
We have a question from Deb Zukowski.
So we have installed solar panels on our town and school buildings. What percentage of this total amount of electrical power that we get from solar is from our own personally owned panels versus the virtual networking?
Virtual net metering?
Right. You've got about 1.3 megawatts of solar panels that are on buildings. And those also were put on as a result of what they call the Zero Renewable Energy Credit Program with the state. Though, with the exception of the field that I built down at the wastewater treatment plant, all of these other projects were done as power purchase agreements, where developers came in, they put up their money. We got the development credit from the state, Zero Renewable Energy Credit, and we basically pay a fee to them for each kilowatt hour that they produce. Now that's on the direct solar. Those projects are as low as 5.5 cents a kilowatt, 6 cents a kilowatt, 7 cents a kilowatt. So we've got some very low prices on the larger direct solar systems. The highest ones are up in the 9s, and they're still savings. Obviously, they're reducing the carbon footprint, but they're still saving money for those particular buildings. One of the reason we did things that way is that you do not want to put solar panels on a roof that doesn't have enough life left in it. So we had to make some determinations on some of the schools not to go forward with it because they weren't necessarily a good candidate. Middlegate is an example of that. That roof was really not a good candidate for it. We were able to use part of the middle school, but not all of it, because the survey that was done at the time the school was re-roofed, for example, showed that there was only certain areas of that building where the roof structure was without question suitable for solar. Reed was close enough to where it had been built that we felt there was enough useful life in it to go forward with a 20-year plus project. And of course, Sandy Hook School was a brand new roof. So you have to balance the condition of the roofs as well as what the cost is to put them into a school or any other building.
Zukowski has another question.
So we have this virtual net. What's it?
Virtual net metering.
Virtual net metering, right.
Thank you. I'll use virtual networking, but if I use that, it's because it's a term I'm more familiar with, okay? So any option on actually having a town as an entity buy into that? What would that mean for the price per kilowatt hour, and what would it even possibly bring down the price per kilowatt hour, because now you're bringing in a lot more users?
So you're saying export the energy and sell it?
If I understand it, the schools and the municipal buildings have got energy provided by Hamden, essentially by someplace in Hamden and Griswold, sorry,
Yeah, I can answer that very quickly. The virtual net metering program that the schools and the other public buildings have in town was a specific program done through the state that was specifically for municipalities, and it was limited to a maximum of 5 beneficial accounts per project. So although the high school had so much consumption, it was its own project. They do have plans for what you're, I think, thinking of, which is a community solar program where other people can subscribe to it. And I will tell you that we're looking at the Batchelder property, the brownfield down there, as a very good site to do a community solar program when that program gets its rules and regulations and gets kicked off by the state legislature. So we are hoping that that gets going sooner than later. And some of the accounts, for example, that would be probably favored would be Nunawadg Meadows, where you have your assisted living. Because a lot of these community programs do give a preference to lower income and assisted living facilities. But that's where your public at large could participate, although the utilities themselves would basically allocate it by a lottery system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Any questions from the folks on the line?
I didn't get that.
Any questions for the folks on the phone?
Oh.
Are you good, Dan?
I have some questions, if that's okay. I kept on trying to wave my hand. I guess nobody saw me.
Oh, yeah, we didn't see it. Go ahead.
One of my questions is, and this might be a stupid question, but it's a question nonetheless. These properties are not in Newtown. Can you explain how they're ours?
I'm going to answer this way. I'll make it as simple as I can. You have to think of electricity today as a commodity that's bought and sold, just like barrels of oil or therms of natural gas. You buy your oil from your dealer. You probably we bid it on a market with the CROG bid. So we're buying it at 100,000 gallons at a clip. What we buy and what goes in our tank, we have no idea where it comes from. It comes from someplace else. But nevertheless, it's still the same 100,000 gallons of oil that's going in our tank. The electricity market now is exactly the same thing. That, for example, Constellation provides power to the schools and also to the various town buildings. Constellation provides power from all over, from many different sources. So even though it's coming through the Eversource wires, if you will, it's just a commodity that's bought and sold. That's why you go out into that third-party market to get the cheapest price possible, and they buy power in blocks from many different sources. So what they did is they figured, why shouldn't the users, particularly the municipalities, get some kind of break on this? And that's really where the virtual net metering program came from, where you had the specific city and town component that would allow us essentially to become investors. And that's really what I almost think of it, is we're almost investors in these projects. And we end up getting a return on our investment. What we're investing in this is the full faith and credit of Newtown saying we'll offtake the power. That allows a developer to get cheaper costs to develop the project, and the legislature has authorized Eversource to pay us basically a credit for each one of those kilowatt hours that's utilized. Now, we're still buying our power from Constellation. We still have those electrons coming in from somewhere, but we're getting an actual cash credit after we net everything out because we've developed solar energy and we put it into the grid in the state. The benefit to the state at large, including everybody on this call, is that on your bill there's something called I just lost the word. Because we have such a great demand for energy and we don't have the generation capacity in the state, we have to pay a premium on that. And basically, it's a congestion charge. That's the word that is used. The more generation we put together in Connecticut from whatever source, the lower that congestion charge is on all our bills. And you pay it institutions, privately, commercially, we all pay that. So that's kind of a second benefit to all of us, is that by developing in-state generation of power, it helps to reduce the pressure on that congestion charge. Does that help a little bit?
Yep, I understand it. Thank you for explaining it to me. Can I ask another question, please?
Sure.
Michelle, is that okay?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
This is kind of an is there any way that we can leverage energy in some of our CIP projects? And what I'm thinking is, like, if a building needs a roof, is there any way to leverage, say we say to a builder or a developer or whatever, hey, we'll put solar panels on a roof if you help us defer the cost of the roof? Is that ever done or something along those lines with those types of projects? Because you spoke.
Yeah, they have been. Yes, the answer is they have been done. I don't think it's as easy to do today as it was a number of years ago, and I will tell you why. A lot of that depends on the federal investment tax credit staying up. That when you can get private entities to take on a project, whatever that might be, they are eligible for certain tax credits that typically a town or a city is not eligible for. For example, if we did these solar fields ourselves, we're not eligible for the investment tax credit, but a private entity would be. So there might be an opportunity to get a developer to do it. They have done it in the past, but it's not necessarily a big break-even deal. I mean, you really have to look at the cost to see if it was worthwhile doing.
So easier said than done, basically.
Well, it can be done, but like everything else, if it looks too good, it usually is. But it depends on the situation. If you didn't have the capital money to do a roof, for example, you work out a deal with somebody to come in, fix your roof, and put solar panels on it. That might be one way of doing it. At one point, we were looking at doing that here in Newtown. We were going to do an arrangement where the company was going to come in. They were going to put up the capital. They were going to, we were going to get savings. They were going to get savings. It was basically going to get a lot of energy conservation work done in town without the town having to put up the capital under the CIP. What changed dramatically was that basically our rate was just much cheaper than what was available to them. So that whole approach unfortunately fell apart at the time. Not unfortunately, the economic situation got better, and we were in a better position to do the work than to have the developer do it and take the 30% cut on the profit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I think we can
All right.
go ahead.
All right, so I'll get stand up again. Bob Gerber and myself and Fred, our community commission, we actually went to Newtown High School. We did what we call a walkthrough. We just take a general overview of what's in the school in terms of HVAC equipment, lighting, hot water, and just see what the general condition is. And, I put a list of here, some observations. First one is the rooftop units. There's roughly 15 rooftop units on the top part of the building that were installed in 1997. And The issue with that is, lots of them are all, getting harder to get parts. The bigger problem is there's what they call refrigerant, which is used for air purification. That refrigerant is now phased out, so you can only buy a refrigerant that's an existing stockpile off the shelf, which when that demand goes up, the costs go up, it's going to get very expensive to service these units. We would recommend that these be added to your CIP plan over the next few years. Probably, Bob and I discussed it, and you could probably do 5 units at a time, and you get a break on, bring one crane out instead of to do a pick, what they call pick of 5, replace 5 units. First, you need to replace one of these in emergencies, so it costs you a lot more money. If these were on the CIP plan, you replace them in 2023 or 2022. Based on the actual guides for the energy efficiency requirements for the newer units, it would save roughly up to 20% in energy. A huge energy savings. So our recommendation would be to add these to your CIP plan. We did walk through the pool room. The pool room, you're always having outside air being brought in and being exhausted out. Currently, they're exhausting the air out without any energy recovery. So if any warm air just get thrown out, we're not recovering that energy you could use to either heat the pool or preheat the air coming in. Based on, again, on the age of the units, it could offer up to and beyond 50% savings in energy. This would require some redesign work because of the way the existing building is and structure. But you can benefit not only the energy, but occupancy comfort. The reason I say occupancy comfort is the way the air is being distributed across the pool right now. Pool obviously you put chlorine in, and the chlorine actually turns into chlorines when it evaporates into the environment. And the chlorines actually cause anybody swimming to have what they call swimmer's cough because it gets into their lungs. So part of the redesign would be to make sure you're sweeping the air across that pool surface, not to evaporate the water too fast, but to give fresh air to the people who are swimming. So I like that to be put on the CIP for consideration as well. Any questions with this? This will go to the next slide.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Or maybe more of a comment. Let me phrase it in a question. Alan, when you say soon, is there any chance we can go back to that previous slide? You say that it's your recommendation to add those 2 things to the CIP. What is there urgency in that, or do you think it's something 8 years from now? Just get it on the list. Can you be any more specific about your recommendation?
I would start in 2 years, start to put maybe 5 units in 2 years, and the next 5 years year 3 to the next 5 units, year 4 to the next 5 units. Okay. But I know there's a break in the CIP, I think, as well. So I don't know how that plays out, but it's something we can work with you to strategize on how to approach it.
Thank you.
We don't have to solve that now. We can work with it.
Thank you.
Yep. And then Captain Quinn and I in Five River, I guess we went to the middle school. Here we had 5 existing rooftop units. One was just replaced, but they were installed in 1987, even 10 years older. And originally they had natural gas. Natural gas has actually been abandoned. And we think we know why, because the heat exchanger was brought out over time. And they get CO, carbon monoxide in the schools, which is fixing. So those have been abandoned. So these really, Bob told me they're roughly $25,000 to replace them, but you have existing 4 really that they're pretty rough shape, and kudos to whoever maintained it to get them the life out of these, because units typically only last 20 years. But these really need to be on the CIP as well, or if Bob can squeeze it out of his maintenance budget, they should really be done. We went to the older 1954 section of the school, the attic. This is something we can look at as well, but the insulation, which actually picture over here, it's compressed, it's seen its better days. Now For energy consumption, they'd like to have like R38 in the building, which would be optimal, but you could add more. But we should look to see if there's any energy credits and potentially add insulation to this section of the building, help reduce any heating loss. And actually, I know we plan to go put air conditioning in the school in the future, but also reduce your cooling costs. I don't know how hot it is there, but shoulder months is pretty hot.
Yes.
So this is really helpful. So, and maybe Bob can fit, portions of the roof, to, do a section at a time or something. Bob's on the phone. I don't know if you want to comment, Bob.
Hi, yes, I'm here. You're referring to it was kind of coming up as an echo, but you're referring to the insulation, Alan, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, that would be something for us to consider. Absolutely. We could get a vendor in there, perhaps do some blown-in insulation or something along those lines, which would certainly be a pretty cheap upgrade there, which would help both in the winter and the summer.
The other thing we're walking through, it really took me by surprise because I know it's been brought up with Pettit with the 260 boilers and redundancy. This school has 2 boilers with redundancy, but the middle school has no redundancy. It's 2 boilers for that entire building, which I was shocked to see. So we really should think about not only adding some redundancy to that building, but if we plan to add that redundancy, we also need to think about if we're going to have air conditioning at school, the size of those boilers for the additional ventilation load that would be required. So add the AC, you got to have the ventilation for the outside air, which you have to condition during the winter, which requires a larger boiler at that rate. So this is something else we should look at as well. So future work, we'd like to walk through this school as well. I know I've been down the boiler room with Bob, but that was about all. But we should probably walk through here. I know we plan to replace the boilers. I forgot what year it was on the CIP, and do LED lighting in here, but maybe there's other energy upgrades we can do as well. Then these aren't in any particular order, but do a walkthrough of Middlegate, Meadow, Holly. As anybody knows, I'm actually in the Public Building and Site Commission as well. I'm the one that's working with the Holly project. So we were part of the Holly project. We did no air quality. You can have a vendor come in and design the building to the latest energy code, but they can follow what they call the prescriptive method, which they just say X amount of students, X amount of outside air. But we actually requested that they look at what they call a performance model. You actually take the indoor air quality, and you can actually reduce the amount of indoor or outside air being brought in based upon the indoor air quality. So you can reduce not only your capital costs on equipment, your operating costs, and still meet the same occupancy requirements. And if the carbon dioxide doesn't raise in those rooms, the new code requires that you have demand ventilation. So they'll bring all the outside air required. So if somebody's worried about COVID, you can still open up those dampers, get a lot more outside air at that time, if that time is hopefully in the future. What will be done is pandemic, it doesn't occur again, but it can be done. Then lastly, you can look at so my next slide is just saying, hey, let's, we're here in town to help you guys, and let's work together. And it's a good set of time.
So, yeah, very much appreciate your coming and sharing all that information. It is more than I ever knew. I think Dan DeLeo probably has, been talking with you a little bit, so he might be familiar with some of these. The one question I have about is the ventilation systems and the COVID, and those are going to be running, I assume, at a much greater, I don't know how you quantify.
They call it air changes per hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my guess is that all these energy savings that you're talking about are going to be different this year than they have been in past years.
It's true, because even some of the plots I put up there, like energy use, I stopped them in March because when everyone started going remote, I called Bob and says, hey, did you close all the outside air, same energy? So look at all the bills and everything, they go down pretty low. But yes, if you're bringing more outside air in, your energy consumption will be higher.
Does anybody else have questions?
No, just more of a comment. I mean, this is wonderful, and thank you so much. And I love your last slide especially.
Oh, thank you.
Because I really do believe, when we interviewed Bob Gerber, we sort of knew that this was his passion as well. And I think working together with your team and all the time you're spending to go around to all of our school buildings and give us that extra assistance is really appreciated. And it's a cost savings, so that's what we all need, especially right now. So
Yeah, we're all looking out for savings of the money.
Exactly. So no, it's great. It's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I would just like to I'd like to make a comment if that's okay.
Yes, Mr. Delia.
Alan, thanks for coming. Fred, thanks for coming. Kathy, I've been working with Alan for a little while now, and I have to tell you, we're lucky to have him helping us. And as you can see, it's very thorough and it's very comprehensive, but they want to work together as a team, and I think that's critical for success in Newtown. Across everyone. And I just want to thank Alan for coming down and talking to us about this stuff. And I think the future is very bright working together.
Sure. Yeah, anytime you want me to come and discuss something, or feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and Alan is also the chair of the Hawley Committee, if the board did not know that. He's the chair of the Hawley Committee, and I've been in a meeting or two with him where he's really steering the ship along with Bob, and I think that's wonderful as well. So thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Sukowski?
Will you be able to get copies of this for those?
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're transparent.
Yeah, I didn't even realize, so the Sandy Hook Energy, that's more than I thought we spent on energy in a building. Is that?
The high school consumes the most amount of.
Yeah.
Followed by.
Before they caught the issue,
Yeah,
but then it went down when they caught the issue. Is that what
Yeah.
you're referring to?
yeah.
That was a big
It was
savings.
big.
I saw it drop almost like the next month, and it was incredible. And, thank you to Bob Gerber for, just turning off some switches. I know it's more complicated than that, but he did a lot of work in that building as well. Noticing things.
He did. I know. I'm confident Bob will be on top of it. So.
Yeah.
I talk to Bob quite frequently. So.
And thank you, Kathy Quinn, for putting this all together. I know you haven't been saying a whole lot, but I appreciate all three of you coming and spending your time with the Board of Ed to sort of give us an idea of what it is that you're doing, because I think it's important. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, one more thing I'd like to say to everyone, to them, to Kathy and Alan and Fred is, I think it would be wonderful if you could spread the word a little more. You have a wealth of information. You're doing good by the town, and I just think it's important for everyone to know what you're doing.
Right.
That's just a comment in general, not just for the Board of Ed, but for the community in general.
Yeah, that's why we put this together. I thought it would be great just to give you an overview, instead of just coming here and talking, just show you what we do, because I know you have a CIP committee, but I believe we can offer a lot of help and direction. Because one of the things I think I forgot to mention to you, Middlegate, you want to put windows in, which is great, but then that changes the indoor air quality. And then if you could do air conditioning, If you did the air conditioning before the windows, that changes the air conditioning load. So when you do the windows later, you actually have less what they call solar heat gain or transmission of heat through the window from the sun, which will reduce the load, but then you get what they call, if you have like gone into a building where it feels clammy, where it's cool but wet, you can get that type of effect. So when you're staging your CIP, it's important to do it in a certain sequence to make sure that you're following through, such as the boilers at the middle school. You're going to do air conditioning later on. Make sure your boilers are sized for that load later on. Instead of putting in new boilers now, you come and find out they're not sized for all the ventilation load.
Good information. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna add a comment to that. For the last 2 years, that's been a part of the budget. So when I've made a presentation or when we talk, I put in a lot about carbon footprint and reducing that, if you recall. And I want to use this presentation. I mean, there was a lot of things that when I go to PTAs and I talk about that, it's amazing how many taxpayers don't even know what we've done to save energy and cost. And they're really interested. That's the part of the presentation they're most interested in. So thank you, because I'm going to use some of that information.
It's there.
I appreciate it.
Or if you're looking for more information, we can probably put it together for you.
Great, thank you.
Maybe, sorry, Michelle, may I speak?
Yes, Mr.
Maybe maybe we could put this on the agenda for the communication committee as well.
Yeah.
Something that could be part of a communication with the, at some point in time.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
We are planning eventually when we have right now there's a lot going on with the COVID, and so we're out a couple of issues, but we have a plan to try and do the facilities, and this would be part of the facilities newsletter, I'm sure.
Great, that's great.
All right, so I said 10 minutes, but it's been really, yeah, there's so much information that you have to share.
Oh, is there a timer?
No. I mean, I was saying, just come in for 10 minutes and, we'll talk. And so this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions, reach out.
All right, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you,
Happy.
Yeah. All right. We shall move to the old business, and we have COVID updates. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. So as you know, we had another COVID case that was reported today. But again, as my communication said, this individual had not been in any of our schools since the opening of school, but did have some limited time with a small group outdoors after school. So again, a second communication to all families. But I wanted to point out our health numbers, indicators are still very positive in the schools. I continue to work closely with our health director, Donna Culber, and Ann Dalton, supervising nurse here, in the identification of cases and the contact tracing. And the three, I think all of us working together were able to really contact trace very quickly and efficiently. And I have to say, parents and staff have been very willing to be a part of that. So that's been, I think, very important. It's certainly a little bit easier in the hybrid model. Again, it might look a little bit different when we all go back, but all of this is really helpful in keeping the risk of infection, especially with the health protocols and making sure we are efficient in what we're doing. Another reality I just want to point out, and I've mentioned this to many parents who have questioned, why aren't we getting into every little detail about when we do communicate? In fact, on my way in, I was talking to our director of health, and we're both in agreement and still in agreement and firm about, you don't have to name people, but you can very easily identify unwittingly by school and grade and staff and or student. So we're very serious about that. And what I say to all parents is, there may be cases, the reality is there may be asymptomatic cases in the school now. So if you need the information, meaning you were or your children were in contact in any way, we will make sure that we reach out. So I think once, one case, two cases, and maybe a third or a fourth, that people will understand what that actually means. So I've had, and so has Donna, many conversations and emails with parents, and I think they understand once we explain that. We're also waiting for Chromebooks, kind of moving off of the case. We are still waiting for our technology, but we're able to utilize a lot of the technology that we had available in the schools to offset the fact that they did not come in for the beginning of school. I know they were, as Andy Birdie put it, flying off the shelves to make sure every parent and every student in that household had access. And it's made, I think, a world of really a difference in terms of success in getting this off the ground. I can't imagine other districts that did not have access. It's sad in many ways, but we've been able to handle it. Even students at the community center and NYA have their devices each day, so they're able to get on and engage with teachers in classrooms and their peers. And I love the word you used, Rebecca, joyful. That's what I see no matter where I go. Kids are just happy to be back to school and teachers are happy to see them. But it's the access to technology that's really incredible. And despite, it being challenging, and that's a reality, it really has worked well. And we thought we'd have a lot more issues with the connectivity, and we have not seen that as we thought we would. So I'm happy to report that. I've worked with Tanya already. Again, congratulations. We're glad to have you here. We're all about keeping track and recording all of the COVID expenses. Most of this we outlined, I thought, very clearly in a report that you've seen and we presented to the Board of Finance last night. And again, I want to reiterate, these are real expenses. The $1.5 million is what was reported to the state of Connecticut and really did represent everything from PPE to additions in staffing to something like bus monitors. And I did mention it last night, and I know I've said this, we're still looking at technology because we do feel that what is there in the report is probably going to go on. And again, we really wouldn't know that. We wouldn't know that in July. We wouldn't know that in August, and we still don't really know that. There are still parents asking for Wi-Fi because of connection. So, and we're helping them with that. So any changes, we will certainly update that report as we go. But I feel really very lucky that we have such an outstanding staff who have really stepped up. I mean, that's the bottom line. We do have an amazing staff here. And that's my COVID update.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Ms. Bukowski.
I have 3 questions. I'll say one and then I'll yield and then come back for the other 2. With the technology devices, do teachers have 2 independent systems, like a duplicated setup, one at home and one in the classroom? So that if over a weekend a school is closed, that the education would be uninterrupted, or are teachers expected to carry their devices back and forth? How do you handle the continuation of distance learning in the event that a school is closed?
So we, again, any survey we took the surveys went out to parents and staff. Am I correct in that, Janice?
Not sure which survey you're talking about.
Technology.
Oh, yeah.
So whether or not you had a device. And some staff willingly choose to use their own devices, obviously, and others really need them. And even support personnel, we were making sure that if they're going to work with students, then they will need a device. So in that sense, it's duplicated. If I want to work from home, then I either have a Chromebook I was given by the school, or I'm using my own. And we've set every single classroom up with the desktop so that they have the cameras and they have the sound and the cameras that actually are separate from the desktop that they can use. I think that's it with the technology, so yes. So for example, tomorrow, if the teachers feel better about coming into school just because they have their resources there and their smart boards that they certainly don't have at home, they can do that, or they can choose to put their lesson through from home.
I just wanted to say, and every teacher, I believe, as far as I know, is issued a laptop computer, and we all have cameras on our laptops when we are hired. So every one of us has a laptop, school issued. So we do have access from home.
Yep.
In addition to the desktops now placed in the classroom.
There was a particular setup needed for every single classroom for this to work, just so you know that. So it wasn't just the laptop. We had to have
we actually don't use our laptop in the classroom at all. There's a particular system with the cameras that we have to use with extended views onto our projector. And Anne has unmuted to answer also. She's unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say that only the high school teachers have laptops.
Oh.
The rest of the teachers typically had a desktop. That's why desktops were added to the high school. And then at the other grades where teachers had a desktop in their classroom, they have been provided a Chromebook if they needed one because they did not have a personal device to use at home, as Dr. Rodriguez stated.
Thank you, Anne.
Ms. Harriman-Stites?
Sort of related to technology, I've seen a few parents question the requirement of having children keep their camera on during class time when they're virtual learning. Can you just explain the necessity of that and why that's part of the protocol?
Or if I'm the remote learner,
if you're the remote learner,
keeping my camera on?
Teachers are requiring students to keep their camera
on. I think we talked about that, and Anne, you can jump in. I know there was a question about that by a parent in particular, and I believe Anne and I spoke and talked to the principals that there may be a condition or a circumstance where a student in their household wants to be on and you can see the student is on and connected, and that should count as being present.
So we have requested that students have their cameras on, and part of the rationale for that was basically the feedback from the spring surveys from parents, teachers, and students themselves, requesting that there be greater connection to their teachers and their peers. So it would seem to fly contradictory to that if they are present in the classroom and then they do not have their cameras on. That means that their teacher and their peers, both in the classroom and their other remote learners, cannot see that student. So it greatly diminishes the interactivity of that student with their teacher and their peers. I think there is some misunderstanding, however, regarding whether or not the image of students is being recorded, because I completely would understand why a parent would not want their child to be shown on a screen and that there be a video recording of that. And that is also not the case. During lessons, the camera is focused on the teacher or other instructional materials, not on the student. And then teachers have been directed to turn off the camera recording for like a discussion portion of the lesson. But we have requested that students attend the meeting and that they attend with their cameras on, basically because that is what was requested and demanded from the school community.
Thank you for clarifying. I think it was the questions I've been getting and what I've been seeing from a good number of parents is just around the students' comfortability displaying their home environment to their classmates. And, you know, I know that was part of the kind of, I don't remember what the document was called, but it was basically like rules of distance learning or something like that, the protocols that were laid out for students. So I appreciate the clarification, but I just want you to understand that that's where it comes from, not from
Yeah.
anything else. That was sort of
Yeah, and that should be, we agree with that. We agree that there should be an awareness of the background that's being displayed, and there were other guidelines that have been given to students regarding what they're wearing and how they should approach the Google Meet as if they are attending class. And certainly, you know, when you're on a Google Meet, the amount of background is pretty limited. And they were actually asked not to have their microphones on. So they have control over the amount of environment that can be shared. And they should we want them to pay attention to that, because we don't want to see everything that's going on in a student's house or a lot of background. However, again, there are, you know, these are guidelines and there are exceptions to every situation. And I know that this was a recent concern that came forward, I would just say within the past day or two. And in those instances where those parents reached out, the classroom teachers were reaching out directly to those parents to discuss what the concerns were, to make sure that we understood the concerns, that we were addressing the exact concern to get to the bottom of what the situation was and how it could be best worked out for everybody involved.
So I think that's what I was referring to, Anne, when I answered your question, because I know we had that discussion. I know I did with another principal as well, that there could be a circumstance where the student is not there, but is there.
right. No, thank you for clarifying. And I don't want it to seem like I don't agree with having this kind of because I absolutely do. But I just think that as we move forward in this process, so I appreciate it.
I think the key here is flexibility. We're all, I mean, honestly, that's what I said early on. I think we all agree that there will be exceptions, and when you look at the state of Connecticut and what they're counting as attendance at present, we have to be flexible in all ways.
Okay, were there any other questions? All right, we'll go back to Ms. Zukowski.
Okay, question number 2. Especially given what happened last night, I'm not sure if we already have this and I just missed it, but the costs that are specifically associated with COVID, and that includes the facilities cost as well as the technology cost, as well as, personnel costs. If it could be broken down by the 3 E's, so that per category, if it could be, basically said, was this already expended? Is this already encumbered? Or is this expected in the future? I think that would be a useful category for us to see when we have to talk with town officials about becoming whole financially again with all of these expenses that we've been incurring.
For future reports, if there are.
And future negotiations, basically. Future discussions. But when we are, because the Board of Finance made it clear that they want to make sure that we don't have to pay for money that wasn't in our budget. Okay, that is really being paid. And so we're gonna, I can foresee we're gonna have future discussions about all of this, and having it, the expenses in that type of a categorization might be helpful to us. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment though that we were asked very specifically to come in like we did with all of the expenses. Now, some of that when you're talking personnel is going to be year long, right? Every other expense on that list, however, are things that we needed above and beyond the operational plan. So whether we actually paid for it at that moment or will soon to pay for that. That's still going to be the expenses above and beyond the budget. So I just want to clarify that because those are real expenses either way. And I appreciate what you're saying because we did talk about that actually. We're capturing future costs so that we know what's coming that maybe we hadn't anticipated yet, not even on that list. But I just wanted to make it clear that all of those items very specifically are things we needed above and beyond the budget.
May I just call a point of order, Madam Chair?
Mr. D'Elia?
Are we talking about the agenda item that I proposed at the beginning of the meeting, or are we combining them now? Is that what's happening? Because I hear mention of the Board of Finance and expenses, unanticipated and anticipated expenses, and that was something that I asked to discuss at the end of the meeting, but if that's what we're going to discuss now, then I'm happy to discuss it now. I guess that's my question.
Yes, good point. No, I was just asking for financial practice going forward and not necessarily intending to get into the details. So I would like to hold off on more explicit conversation until we actually talk about that subject.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right. Did you have another question?
Yes. My last question. So I read a really interesting article about some dorms in Arizona that had sewage testing. So basically pool-based testing concept where you could detect COVID infections earlier by testing essentially the wastewater of the dorms. And so I saw that, and it was able to detect asymptomatic cases very, very early, and the dorm basically was able to stay open by having this. And as the weeks passed on, we saw that UConn is looking into this, and Yale is looking into this. And as we know, every time we meet, I'll talk about another aspect of possible testing. So my question was whether or not it would make sense for us to start an investigation. But step number one was to talk with, I sent an email to Donna Colbert, and she replied today and said that she found the idea very intriguing also, and that she was forwarding an inquiry to the State Department of Health and the, who has, I guess they're working with Yale in this particular area. So the question I would have for the board is whether it would make sense for us to, at the facilities committee, to start looking into the possibilities of retrofitting our school buildings with the necessary equipment to make this happen, how expensive it might be, what are the options for actually paying for it, and that whether we should be starting that conversation in parallel with waiting for the Department of Health so that when we go back full on site, we can be ready, or if we should further wait for more guidance from Ms. Colbert.
So,
may I speak?
Chair of the CIP Facilities Finance Committee, did you hear that?
Yeah, may I speak?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Dukowski, I did get your email today about that. It's been a hectic day for me, but I think we should have a meeting about this. One concern I do have, and I'll discuss it a little bit later, is we're going to need additional money for that. And last night's meeting kind of changed the entire conversation for me. So that's something we're going to have to address, but I will definitely set a meeting and put it on the agenda. Thank you for bringing it. Thank you for finding it, and thank you for bringing it to my attention, and thank you for bringing it to the board.
So I don't know if it's in the purview of the CIP Facilities Committee, but from a health perspective, I would want to know if you find positive samples, what do you do about it? What is that going to mean to the school district? I think is what I'd like to know. Not now, I just want to know when when the research is.
And Donna, and the interaction with the Department of Health would help fill that side of the story in for sure. And then we would just be in parallel looking to see if it comes up that it is, something that makes a lot of sense. we'll be ready to actually just throw the switch and go.
Okay, so any other comments or questions?
I think that we can start at the CIP, but I agree with you, Michelle. This is a much bigger conversation, but we can start there.
Okay, very good, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the COVID update?
I would like to make a comment.
Yes, Mr. Delia.
Dr. Rodriguez, I just wanted to say thank you. I can imagine the stress you're under and your team is under. I received a number of phone calls regarding the first announcement of a positive case and people wanting to know more details. And I just want to say that I completely agree with your method. And I personally, I think it's the right thing. I don't think we should start giving, adding fuel to any fire, for lack of a better word. And I just wanted to thank you for the method that you're using to communicate regarding cases, identified cases. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to piggyback on that and just say that Dr. Rodriguez, you mentioned a willingness of people to speak with the health director, any contact tracing that was done. And I think that the method of not revealing too much information, because we all know when you get on social media, everybody's got, you pick out little pieces of information and you do your detective work. And I just think that people need to be very the contact tracing is huge in terms of being able to keep this under control, and having the trust of people in that process is very important. And I get that people want to know what's going on, but I think from the public health perspective, it's important that you do the way you're doing.
Thank you. And Donna Colbert uses, I love her line of, this is a community issue, not a school issue, which I think is a perfect answer.
All right, any other comments or questions? Shall move on to our new business. And that brings us to the facilities summer work update. Mr. Gerber, you've been with us through all of our many agenda items.
I'm here. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good.
I do. I don't know how you guys want to go through it, but I'm pulling up the agenda packet starting on page 18, which has the list, and then it's followed by several pages of some photos. So I'll start with the list. I do want to give a plug to Alan, Kathy, Fred, and their sustainable energy group. In addition to the stuff that they talked about this evening, some of the other stuff that they do, they were instrumental with the bag ban, the plastic bag ban for shopping. I think they were ahead of the curve of where the state was at. And additionally, with the solar, I don't know if there's any other town in Connecticut that has the solar footprint, whether it's physically on a building or the virtual net metering, as Fred mentioned. I don't think anybody's even close to where Newtown is in terms of quantity, production, etc. So those guys have really done a tremendous job with their work. And if you ever come to their meetings, it's very laid back. I mean, they do talk about a lot of business, but there's a lot of banter. There's a lot of comic relief from Fred, and it's just the meetings go pretty smooth and pretty quickly. But I'll jump into my piece. So if you're looking at the page 18 there, you'll see the list of work broken down by school that was accomplished over the summer. So starting with Hawley, you see there was some down on the main level, ground level. There's 3 ramped areas of flooring that we replaced. Just kind of freshening it up a little bit, just replacing some floor areas that were a little dingy. Same thing with the entry matting. We replaced that. That was showing its age. We replaced the elevator sump. There's a hydraulic elevator that goes up one floor from the ground floor to the second floor. That was replaced. That was on the verge of leaking. So we caught that in time to avoid a much bigger catastrophe. We replaced several exhaust fans. I want to say about 5 of them on the 48 wing, which is the middle part of the building. That was done in-house with our own trades guys. We purchased the equipment. They removed the old fans, installed and wired up the new ones. And then moving on to Sandy Hook. This was at a request from the principal. We installed a sidewalk and modified a fence in the rear of the school to go to the playground. This was to alleviate classes that were interrupting gym, having to go from the building through the gym in order to get to the playground. We also installed a second bottle filling station. So now there's one on both floors, first and second floor. This was done in-house. So we again purchased the materials, and our guys teamed up to do the installation. Moving on to Middlegate, we wrapped up the gym air conditioning installation, and we cleaned all the ductwork. We installed, there was an old, probably a 20-year-old mini split unit that was providing AC for the PAL/kindergarten classroom, room number 6. That was needed to be replaced. So while we were doing it, the neighboring classroom, room 7, also services the same individual. So it was prudent to just replace the one existing unit and add a second unit. We also repaired the concrete stairs that go from the lower parking lot up to the bus drop-off loop there. Head of Meadow, we went through all the bathrooms throughout the school, and any bathroom that had a hard tiled floor with grout was restored. So we freshened up the grout, cleaned up the tile, gave it an almost brand new look. We replaced all the window treatments in the classrooms. We did some new entry matting at 2 entrances, and we replaced we installed some floor tile in staff bathrooms. Moving on to Reed, we did some painting, which was accomplished in-house with our custodians. We replaced a section of floor tile in the main entrance, just outside where the main office is. So if you walk through the front doors to the left, we replaced the main entrance vestibule carpet. We did some work on the side entrance where the preschool is. We did some sidewalk work. There's also there was some foundation work where some of the concrete was kind of falling apart and crumbling, so we refreshed that. We replaced 4 of the variable frequency drives down in the boiler plant, 2 of which were for the heating system, 2 for the cooling system. We installed some privacy film on a number of locations on the main level, the main office, some guidance rooms, some other kind of private rooms to avoid traffic in the hallway peering in. And we completed a large VAV control upgrade to essentially future-proof the building. The controls that we have at Reed being, that school being about 20 years old, those controls haven't been touched, and a lot of those are becoming obsolete. So this afforded us a chance to install some new control devices, and at the same time, it afforded us to essentially get some attic stock, since the controls that we took out were still in good working order. It gives us some attic stock, so if we do have a failure, we have a place to pull from and have the ability to make a repair. Moving on to the middle school, we did some carpeting and floor tile work. We did some classroom window treatments in the A wing and also in the media center. We removed 15 large pine trees. These are about probably 100 feet or more tall by the baseball field. We did some brickwork by the E-wing. There was some brick that was, number of brick that were missing outside an exterior door. That was all repaired and repointed. We did some other repointing work by the main entrance. And we, as Alan mentioned in his presentation, we replaced a rooftop unit, an E-wing, which had failed when we went to start it up in May. Finally, wrapping up with the high school, we replaced the gym padding in the small gym. This was just getting beat up from use. We resurfaced the tennis courts, so those were power washed. There was a number of cracks in the surface. Those were all repaired, and then a fresh coat of color and lines were put on, so those tennis courts look brand new. Throughout the entire F-wing section of the building, all of that ductwork from the units up on the roof all the way down to the ground level and everywhere in between, that was all cleaned. And probably the biggest things that I could say our guys are proud of, we have the new security shed at the main driveway. That was purchased by Mark Pompano. But our guys basically did all the finish work. So it was dropped on a pad, and our guys did all the electrical, put in an air conditioning unit, and a lot of the finish work to get that going. And I think the crown jewel is the security welcome desk at the main entrance when you walk into the building. I had gotten prices on this at the request of the school about this time last year, and it was in the neighborhood of about $30,000 to have a company, provide a furniture system style. Our in-house maintenance guy, Mark Pierazzoli, who is a carpenter by training, basically built this thing from scratch with his bare hands, and it mirrors any. I don't know what the best way to describe it. You'd have to go there and look at it, but it's just it's a colossal piece of work. And probably saved us, probably cost us out of pocket maybe $3,000. So a huge cost savings there. And I think it's a much better product in the end. And lastly, we did some painting of lockers in the B-wing hallway on the first floor. So if you go to the next page, that'll start with some of the photos. So here's the Sandy Hook. We modified that section of gate, fencing to add a gate, and we added that sidewalk. So now classes can go out the rear entrance and have a shortcut to the playground without having to interrupt gym class. The next page is these stairs go from the lower parking lot up to the bus loop and then across to the main entrance. These were basically falling apart and was a big trip hazard, so we had those refreshed over the summer. Moving on to the next one. We have the flooring at the Reed lobby. So this is, I think this is a big step, and hopefully we can keep this going. So the flooring product that we put in here is very similar to the floor that's at the Newtown Community Center. It's a product made by Mannington, who's a well-known name in the flooring world. This floor does not need any kind of wax, so there is no shine to it. The look that's there is the look that's there, but it has a very durable coating, so it's able to resist scratching and scuffs. And I think this, if we find success with this, it avoids a lot of cost and a lot of labor from our guys having to strip and wax floors. So it's a time saving, a labor saving, and a cost saving by not having to purchase wax and spend time constantly doing this every couple of years. So we're excited to see how this wears as the year comes on. And if it proves successful, we'll look to emulate this further at Reed and also in the other buildings. Moving on, here is the next page has the frosting or the privacy film that was put on in a number of locations. And then moving on to the middle school, you see the clear cutting there of those trees that were taken down. And I think a strong sense in my gut is telling me we made the right move there because of the storm that we had in early August, where if God forbid one of those had fallen the wrong way and landed on the school, it would have been a disaster. The next page. This is the rear entrance at E-Wing. So pretty much that whole wall there was repointed and repaired. There was a lot of voids in the mortar, a lot of problem areas, and especially where that exterior door is down at the bottom. There was probably a good dozen or so brick that had just gone missing. And this, pretty much results from the plows pushing snow up against the building. It sits there and it just kind of eats away. So this was repointed and treated with a sealer. So that should give us some good lifetime. Moving on to the next page. There's a couple areas of the building here. This is if you're facing the main entrance, this is on the left of that. Again, same thing where you get the snow shovels and plows push it up against the building, and over time it deteriorates the brick and the mortar. So we replaced some brick that was starting to disintegrate. We repointed the joints, and that was treated with a sealer as well. And then moving on to the next photo, we've got the new rooftop unit. This is on E-Wing, so we found this. The old unit was inoperable when we went to start it. When we came back to occupy in May. And here's our town electrician, Board of Ed electrician Archie, working on the power. So again, we purchased the equipment. The manufacturer provided the crane to rig out the old unit, rig in the new one, and then our guys, Jeff Bell and Archie Paloyan, completed the remainder of the work to get this unit operational. And then moving on, we've got the photo of at the time this was an in-progress photo of the new wall pads in the gym, which are now missing all of the, I don't know if you want to call them punch outs of, vinyl that's ripped and just abuse. And then moving on, we've got the tennis courts. So you could see a nice shot there where there's, we got a nice fresh coat of paint or the, playing surface, new lines, new court surfaces and no cracks, which is the most important. We've got this, next we've got the weight room that was painted. This was done in-house with our custodians. So if you see the white color that's above, that was the whole wall. So our guys put the blue, they put the gold stripe, and they did this on all four walls in the weight room. Not to mention moving all the equipment, and all the cardio equipment, the weight training equipment. So a big undertaking by them. And I think that wraps it up. So a pretty busy summer for our guys. As Dr. Rodriguez mentioned early on in the meeting, I can't say enough about the custodial staff, our maintenance guys, our vendors and contractors. Really a tremendous effort was put forth to get a lot of this stuff accomplished, in addition to the other maintenance and COVID prep that was done for the schools this summer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Herbert. I can imagine that doesn't even include the preparations for COVID that had to be done, like all the ventilation changes that I think were done, and I know you all have been working very hard, so this is a piece of it, right?
Correct, yes.
So does anybody have any questions or comments? Kowski? Oh,
if Dan has any, I'd like him to go first.
Mr. Delia, did you have?
I just want to thank Bob for his excellent work. I think it speaks for itself. I think that Bob has, Bob, I mean, I'm just extremely impressed and happy with what Bob does and what he has done and what the future holds. And I hope that the board agrees. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, Ms. Zukowski has a question or comment.
So I will ditto that, Bob. I think you're wonderful. What I noticed is that the bulk of the items could be found on page 166 of the 2019-22-2020 budget book. And for sake of time, maybe this is not the right meeting, but maybe we could talk about this in our CIP Facilities Finance Committee to reconcile what you've done in the summer and other with the projects that are listed on page 166 to understand the relative costing, what was estimated and what was actual. And in the cases where you may have pulled projects forward to understand that. So Mr. Chair of the CIP Facilities and Finance Committee, this would be another possible topic for one of our future meetings, if you agree.
Mr. Delia.
Sure.
So you'll have busy meetings. Mr. Gerber, did you want to say something or?
No, I was just going to say I have the information. So yeah, whenever you guys want to set up the meeting, I'm happy to bring that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed in our previous presentation with the Sustainable Energy Commission that there were a lot of suggested projects, and it would be great to have your recommendation on what to do with those, because those were new to me. I'm sure you are aware of that conversation that's going on, but it would be interesting to know your perspective on those. Not right now, but maybe in the future. Because I do think that, as Mr. DeLeo was pointing out, there was, as of yesterday, there was the possibility of maybe being able to fund some of those through the non-lapsing account. I don't know how we would do it at this point, but whether those are CIP items. And I do think the debt I know the Board of Finance looked at debt service, and I'm getting off topic, so Mr. DeLeo is going to call a point of order on me. All right, anybody else have any questions or comments?
Hey, Bob, I do, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. DeLeo.
Bob, I think you're going to probably leave after this, so, which I don't blame you, but Bob, could you just quickly speak to some of the upgrades that were not part of the budget that you had to incur that were not on this list? And just be brief if you don't mind.
Can you repeat the question?
Bob, can you just speak briefly to some of the expenses that you had to incur that were not planned for? Just very briefly, that are not on this list, other upgrades and whatnot that you had to incur?
Well, I think Tanya touched on a couple of them. We had a sizable repair made to the chillers at Reed. We had the PA system that needed attended to. But we've just been, shifting priorities as things come up. Okay. Trying to think off the top of my head what else there could be, but I've got a lot of lists and stuff on my PC at the office, so that's kind of my repository for all this kind of stuff.
So maybe we'll add that to our next CIP agenda as well. How's that?
Sure.
Thanks, Bob.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Gerber. Very much appreciated that you stuck with us through all of this and all the work that you've done over the summer in addition to this as well, what you've just presented. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And I'll hang on the line because I think I may have answers for some questions that come up for Dan's topic that he added.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, yeah, it'll be just a few more minutes. We're getting there.
Thanks, Bob, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we have action on the 2021-22 school budget development calendar.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2021-2022 school budget development calendar.
Okay. So Mr. Lee makes the motion, Ms. Harriman Stites seconds the motion. Let's see, did Ms. Bettis or Dr. Rodriguez, do you want to speak to the calendar that we are looking at for the approval of the budget, which starts now and goes through?
It's all the way through the year.
Yeah, the budget calendar, I call the budget season, because it's seasons. I mean, just some important dates to go over, and I went over this in the 18 meeting as well. October 23rd and October 30th is when all of the budget packets are due to central office. And at that point, my department will review everything. We'll start speaking with the cost center leaders in November, and that runs through December. And then the superintendent's overview will be on January 19th. Board of Ed workshops. I think this gives us enough time, and I like this calendar again this year. Thank you for an extra week in there for producing the superintendent's budget. So the workshops begin January 21st and run for the month and through January 28th. Adoption of budget from the BOE regular meeting is early on in February. I mean, other than that, you can read through the rest of the process. I think it's a good calendar. I think we can definitely commit to these dates.
No, I just wanted to say that Tanya just mentioned she talked with the entire A team, so they, and this is standard every year, but this is the time they get the budget books, they go through it, they understand what the process is. And this will be Tanya's first go round with starting meetings, and those start in November, so that we start to develop what our needs are and what priorities we have in putting this whole budget together. And again, this will be a unique year, even for the budget.
All right, do we have any board feedback, questions, comments? We'll go with Ms. Zukowski.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the calendar. I'm a little concerned because the budget, especially for people who are not, financial people to begin with, having just a week to go through, and in fact, having even less than that time to prepare for some of the presentations that we will be having, it seems like a really big, there's a metaphor, a really big lift, that I'm not sure that I would be able to do to the best of my ability. So if we could move that date earlier instead of July 12th or January 12th, if we could somehow get it in the hands of Board of Ed members, even by a weekend. So I was looking up to see what the 12th was, if that was a Monday, could we at least just move it up to the previous Friday? Let me see. So if we could just move it to the prior Friday, just to give us a few more days to grok it.
Can you just clarify, are you referring to the workshops?
No, the hand delivery of the budget, that's what you're referring to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving that a little bit earlier. I don't think that's a problem, do you? We're actually later here than we've been.
Yeah, I've noticed that it was.
I don't remember what it was last year, but it offered us an extra week to turn everything around. It's a very tight schedule in central office, and I do have to comment that being understaffed right now, there's so much pressure on the department right now. I'm doing what I was doing and what Ron will be doing. So I'm down a person in the budget area. I mean, we can definitely review the calendar again. I don't know, but this has to be approved tonight, correct?
But let's look at the 12th. Let me just take a minute.
I would,
It would be Friday. So we're only talking about having that one extra weekend.
One business day, yeah.
That's all it is, Tanya, it's one business day.
we're talking about moving it to the 8th.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and this is actually,
Really one day.
and it was last year. So I don't think that's.
Okay.
It is, but I understand the pressure without the staff.
I do too.
And I fully understand that too, but it would just be one business day for the staff, and it would give us 3 calendar days to, you know, get our heads around it.
It does make the assumption you weren't going to.
So it will be.
On a deadline.
I'm sorry?
I said that makes the assumption that you wouldn't have been working on the weekend when you have a big deadline, which I think is a big assumption. I know when I have a big deadline, you work through a weekend to get it done. So I just want to make sure that you know, that we're clear that it may only be one business day, but that doesn't mean.
Here's the thing that's happened in the past is if you're looking at this calendar, if we had the weekend and the Monday, we could give it one more final check, and every year there's been something that's come up where we have to revise pages, reprint, and the printing takes us a day. It's a full day. It's one copier, one person, $20. I understand your point, and we'll make it happen if that's what you prefer, but in the business office, that extra day on that Monday does provide a lot of time for us.
So is there a way, as we're into the process and we're seeing how well the process is going, to at that point make this decision?
That I'm not sure of if we have to abide by that calendar, or say if we're done ahead of time, we can have the books off. I'm not familiar with that.
That's actually a better idea.
Madam, may I speak? I don't know if you could see me or not, so I'm sorry for calling out. I feel like I'm being rude.
Yes, Mr. Delia, what?
Can we set it for the 8th, and then if Tanya needs extra time, she can tell us that I need a few extra days? Is that fair?
That's another option.
The other way around.
I have no problem, Tanya.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna suggest that we stick to the I mean, we have this was for approval this evening. And why don't we come back and we'll reassess as we get closer to that. And if we can hand them out on Friday, we'll hand them out on Friday, without a doubt. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Feel better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Debsy, are you okay with that? Deb Zakowski, you're good with that? I can't hear or see anybody.
Yeah, if we could have that as an amendment to the motion, that there will be a reassessment midway through the process for potentially delivering the budgets earlier to the Board of Ed.
I don't think we need to make an amendment. I think that would just be.
An agenda item.
It would just happen.
Right, if we get to the point where we can hand them out on Friday, we will let you know, and we'll make sure they're hand delivered that Friday. It's one of those things we're not gonna know midway through the process. You cannot in the budget development.
Okay.
Okay?
It's almost, we'll know.
And I do appreciate what Tanya said, because that made a very good point. It is one day, but that's a big one day.
And there is, I get that it's a week that we have to review it, but it's also, I mean,
So I admit that I often end up reviewing sections like the day before we're actually, so it's really, you know, a full month of review that we get.
Right, but I read the entire thing first and try and grok the budget for more of a 30,000 foot view, and then I do a deep dive. And, you know, that is, for me personally, the way I work, it would be better to have a little bit more time. Also, we never know exactly what's gonna hit us, you know, personally as we, you know, go through this, and speaking with, you know, with parents who are not doing too well.
Yeah.
You never know what's gonna happen.
All right, so I mean, I think we've landed on a
We'll
reasonable.
make
Make the best effort to get it done up to Friday, but we'll leave this as it is currently. Okay. All right. Is that okay with everybody on our screen in the library? All right, so are there any other questions about this calendar before we vote on it? All right, sensing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So that passes unanimously. All right. We'll move on to superintendent's goals. So Dr. Rodriguez, would you like to?
Sure, so I put this together with some what I feel are new goals in mind for this year. So I don't want to waste your time and go through every little nuance, but I'd rather have questions and any areas that you feel may have been missed. And again, that isn't just tonight. I'm sure that, you know, if there's something that you feel should be added or modified, just please let me know. But I started with the overarching support for my staff and administrators and community and managing both the academic side and emotional challenges specific to COVID, because I believe that is a priority this year and something as a leader I need to really embrace and support all of my staff. So I put each, just like I do every year, how I will go about that. And again, as you know, my goals often fit well with when we evaluate at the end of the year. But again, you can just go through and see some of the areas are, you know, making sure that the reentry plan that we're really looking at, the goals and the practices and protocols. I added in my visibility because I think that's critical this year. I've been to every building, even to the community center, and that will continue throughout. Working very closely with the director of health and Ann Dalton, our supervising nurse, in contact tracing. So you'll see all of the areas that I'm working on under that particular goal. I also think a huge piece of this will be working with my cabinet and central, my school leaders, as well as Ann and the assistant superintendent and Frank, our director of teaching and learning, in making sure that we're supporting our teachers in professional development with distance learning and technology, as well as developing making sure we have a solid system for the social and emotional supports that we feel are critical this year, not just for students, but for staff as well. So all of that really represents, I think, my most important goal this year. I still have a vision, and I want to make sure that that is communicated clearly at all times, promoting an academically sound, emotionally safe, and equitable learning environment. And again, I'm taking that that nuance of diversity and equity into that vision now, because I think it should be a very strong connection.
there. So you can go through it. I don't have to go through it for you. But you'll see very clear action steps about holding staff, everyone in the community accountable for making sure they are looking at data regarding teaching and learning, providing PD for remote learning, continuing to keep the board updated on, decisions related to COVID, cases, trends, all of that, because I think that's also important in this. And then using the board resolution and new policies as a framework, making sure that a committee subgroup out of peak is, and that will be actually going out tomorrow in my communication with parents about the lunch. That will also be, there will be 3 things, and the third is welcoming new members to peak and making that an official subgroup. Janice is actually on peak in the branding and communication, and we actually talked about diversity and equity last year, even prior to any of the issues. So that was something that, if you recall, was something that was important to me. So then if you go on, the operational plan, I put that in there every year because that is certainly a big part of my role. As you can see, it's going to take pretty much the entire year. So again, working with the new director of business and school leaders, looking at the resources, meeting future needs, monitoring and making budgetary decisions based on enrollment, class size, other factors, including COVID and how that's impacting. I will tell you, just to give you an example, we were just talking about how enrollment will be tricky because there are parents who have pulled their students out for a year, hoping things get better to put them back, holding students back, not starting kindergarten. So we were just saying some of what we see in the enrollment, we need to look at very seriously and not put out that number because it's probably incorrect. So we will hopefully find a way of surveying those parents and getting there. It's hard to ask them right now, but to before the budget is put together, getting a sense of whether or not they plan on bringing students back. I will tell you, I just heard from Deb Peterson today in our cabinet meeting, there are 28 new families with special ed students. So we are going to start to, I feel, see an uptick in Newtown. And I think with our teachers hitting some of this out of the park, that really helps as well. So when people are shopping for really good districts, because I honestly feel some of this will go on for quite a while. So I think all of this is really important in the budget. If you look to the bottom, I wanted to point out the cost savings measures, such as a possible retirement package and repurposing of staffing positions will be a part of, I believe, what I'm going to present at some point to all of you regarding some cost savings and around budget season. So. Support and mentorship for our new director of business. And it won't just be me. I want to make sure that Tanya has all that she needs to do a great job and really send her to professional development. Casbo has tons of workshops that she's aware of. So I want to make sure that Tanya has as much support as she can get. I want to, and then developing the I think is extremely important, a systemic approach to monitoring the expectations and deliverables related specifically to diversity and equity. Again, one of the things that might be something we should look at sooner than later as a district compliance officer, someone who really, it's not happening at the building level, but that can really look at those issues that you hear about across the district. Some of that can be a liaison between the family and the administrator, the staff, and come to resolution on issues, maybe even get ahead of issues. So again, we can talk about that, but it's something that is one of my goals this year.
again, working with our assistant superintendent, director of teaching and learning and curricular revisions, again, around embracing multicultural perspectives and diversity. This has come up, had a wonderful couple of phone calls, Google Meets, I should say, with some of our former students. And again, I've spoken to Ann about this, having more students have a voice in content selection and text selection. This is not a new concept by any means. I kind of even was angry with myself for saying, why did we not continue down that path? Because that's really, as a high school teacher, former teacher, and administrator, I mean, we want students to be a part of that. They really do have a lot of really good things to say and really good insights about what texts might be important for a variety of voices. You know that I'm bringing in Dr. Derek Gay. He will not be in person. He is Google meeting through January. So it will be a district-wide, but it will be something that we will need to stream for everyone. But he is, Michelle and I think Rebecca, you might have been there. He's really phenomenal. I've already had 2 discussions with him, and I really think that the staff will like him. And his focus is all on diversity, but from a really good, positive place. So I think that will help. And just updating all of you on our data. So when we're reporting all of the incidents, that you will get to know that in general sense. Disciplinary data is very important.
That's it. And that is all.
Anybody have comments, feedback? Yes, Ms. Stokowski.
It may be in here, I was, a little remiss, I guess. But you talked about 28 new families with special ed. I don't know how many families have graduated out. Again, I moved here in 2002, and at that time, the school district was really putting a lot of effort into having a really high quality special ed, in particular autistic program. And they did a wonderful job. Such a wonderful job that word got out, and a lot of families moved in specifically for that very expensive service. Now, the question I have is are you thinking of having or creating a strategic plan on how to make sure that what we do for our students is sustainable? Because what happened in the knots is that it was really great, and then the pressure on the budget closed the program down. And now it's getting to be very great again, but I don't want to see that same thing happen.
So between co-teaching models that we might probably will expand in the district, as well as our 18 to 21, which is our 22 program, the transition program, the autistic program, the models that we just started, one at the middle school, SAIL, and SAIL at the high school, as well as the cafe, which is part of the transition program at the community center. This is what I believe is attracting special ed parents. There's no doubt. We've heard it directly from them in town. I will tell you, a couple of the realtors called to get data, one who I know very well, and he wanted to know, there's gotta be an uptick, because that's all I'm hearing from people that I'm showing homes to. So I think that we've got a good system. I really think that a lot of the work we did, and I know out of some negativity comes positive, and I think the entire special ed, the issues that came up a year ago, maybe it's 2 years ago, I don't even remember, have really helped. Because I think we took a step back, agendas at meetings, PPTs, really a different approach, I think, with families, and very upfront, as to really trying to give that support, whatever we can do. So I really feel strongly that it's a really strong department right now.
And that's why I'm concerned. Okay, we can be the victims of our own success all over again. Or it sounds like, I'm not an expert on special ed, but what I've been hearing just sounds absolutely phenomenal. And as a member of the Board of Ed, I'm proud of our district for doing it. But what will happen, or if history repeats itself, we're just going to get to the point where we can't manage the budget. So we need to have a more of a strategic plan on how to do that. So for example, could we somehow think regionally so people could come in and if just to bring that back so that people don't have to move here to get these particular services? I mean, just thoughts about a strategic plan to make sure that this is sustainable for the long term.
So it's a good point, and I don't know if we need a full strategic plan to do this, but one of the things, if you recall, we repurposed positions. One was to bring a staff member that would have lost his job to the SAIL program. We have other ideas, especially if we look at co-teaching across the entire district, how we utilize support personnel, paras in new ways. But there are a lot of things that we can think about so that we sustain these programs, and it might not even be a huge expense either. We did look at regional. I will tell you, I don't think that's on the docket for a while. It's just not, especially under the pandemic. People don't want to go to other towns. So I think that your point's well taken. I mean, we will look at it strategically, not necessarily a strategic plan. And we'll report to you if there are things, especially through this budget season, we need to sort of get our bearings on what are the priorities that we can really wrap our, we've got new programs now, and I don't want those to fall.
Any other, yes, Ms. Ludline.
Laura, you talked about the fact that you would be looking at state data and in-house data to look at the operational plan and where the needs are. And I know that since last March, everything kind of came to a halt, that we don't have the same trail of data that we've had in the past. What are they saying at the state level now about what can be expected and what are we looking at doing to increase the amount of maybe in-house data that we have to better guide if what we're doing is sufficient to continue the learning progress in students, or do we need to make adjustments? So what data can we expect to see as we come closer to making decisions about the budget?
So they are, actually there's a webinar next week on this very topic that I'm going to be a part of. This is probably coming up more now. They let the schools open. A lot of it is using in-house data because we know, there's not a lot of testing data from last year to show anything. But to continue to look at where the really in-house, where you really want to focus on your students and how they're doing based on in-house assessment, especially look at gaps and things like that. So using your survey process to assess students and make sure they're getting both the academic and the emotional supports. That's where we are. I think assessing needs, not just on the academic side, but it's going to be a lot on the emotional side this year, I think, more than anything. And again, where are the gaps and how can we fill them in creative ways? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about how we can keep a data trail going so that we're making data-driven decisions. So that's just what my question was, because I know that, mine too, it's a very different process when you're looking at making decisions about education going forward without an understanding, having that continued understanding of where students are on their journey.
And I think Anna, is Ann still on? And there
Yes.
are some assessments, one in particular where we're still feeling strongly we could give, correct?
Yes, so right now, the state is planning to have state assessments administered in the spring, and we'll see how that will play out because they are saying that those tests would have to be taken in person. So don't hold your breath on that. But we are planning to administer the NWEA. Right now, we're tentatively looking at a window in October when our K-6 students would return. We would like to test in person, except for our distance learners. We would create a remote learning, a remote testing plan for them. But we would like to test our K-6 students in person. The window would also apply to the middle school, and we do test some ninth graders as well. And we were looking at testing them by cohort on their days when they are in school, and then providing an opposite instructional experience to the cohort that is out of school, so that we can get as much in-person testing done as possible. So that would allow us, Deb, to compare the where they are in October compared to where they were last January. So we would have some kind of a look at that, and it would also give us a baseline so that we could test them again in the winter and again in the spring and monitor our own growth. Now, for our younger learners, there's many more assessments that are given, and some of them are very short, quick assessments. We have put a focus on getting kids back in and building relationships and allowing teachers time to get comfortable in the new approach to teaching and learning that they're experiencing. But we have identified some key assessments, particularly assessments around determining a reading level, something that's critical for teachers to plan their instruction. And then lastly, some of the online learning platforms that we did move forward with and purchase that are relatively new come with some quick baseline assessments that are routinely built into the programs. And so some of that will help us get an indication as to where students are and what the potential deficits are as well.
And we found NWA really does give us an indicator of where students are, so it's extremely helpful. I don't know if they give that in where you teach, but in at least the language, the reading and the math.
Right.
Yeah, we have a.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Sure.
Are you asking for this data to be brought to the board, or just do they have access to data?
I'm asking what data they expect to use, because that's one of the points on her goal. I know in the past we've had presentations of data to the board. So if that can happen at a much later date, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that there's an expectation that there's going to be data available. And then my follow-up question is just, do we have any understanding about the SAT and the PSAT? And
Yes, so they're giving the ACT and SAT at the high school. Every teacher will be, I think, proctoring.
Yeah, they're happening on September 23rd and October 14th.
Yes, so that's moving forward as well.
Great.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, this is ambitious, and I really like the goals. I think they really fit some of the things that are just timely and, but also timeless, because some of these are consistent from year to year. So I appreciate that. All right.
Can I ask one question, please?
Mr. DeLeo.
Dr. Rodriguez, I was for the new director of business. I just want to make sure that Tanya has support from a peer or somebody else who's experienced being a director of business. I don't know if that's something that would go under your goals or her goals or, but.
So I think if you want to.
So Castro has a mentorship program that I just signed up for yesterday. Spoke to Sharon.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, and I don't know how that will, work if it's going virtually, pandemic. So
I just think it's important that you have someone who has experience in what you're going to experience, that you can, at least bounce ideas off, frustrations and all that good stuff.
And there is a good network of district managers that even today I received an email from somebody from Brookfield asking a question regarding transportation.
Thank you.
All right. We're not taking action. We don't take action on goals. This is just informational. Okay.
Next meeting, actually.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I checked last year, the second meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I need to make a motion.
A motion for what?
August 25 minutes.
Oh, okay. I had it the other way around. Yeah, okay. Oh, let's see. Can we? Yeah, I guess we can do that.
Oh, is it out of order? Am I?
Is that, we have somebody out of the room right now, so maybe we could do the discussion about the COVID expenses before we do that and leave that for last.
Okay.
We do that?
Sure.
Because I imagine this discussion will go on for a bit. And,
yeah, I'm gonna try. I know it's late, so I'm gonna try to be fairly brief. Would you mind if I started?
please go ahead.
So I asked that this be added to the agenda because I just want the entire board to be informed on what's happened and kind of this will guide our thinking moving forward. I've been working on a committee, the CIP committee. I've sat in a number of Board of Finance meetings, had many discussions with Board of Finance members. And last night was a tremendous disappointment for me. And I urge the community to watch that meeting, by the way. I urge everybody in the community to watch that meeting. But I just want to kind of give you an idea what happened so that we can maybe have a discussion about how we make our decisions going forward, because it's really important, and this is for the good of the children. And I want to remind everybody of that our job, we are stewards for the children of Newtown. We presented a very honest forecast and accounting of actual expenses related to COVID that were beyond the budget. The motion was made. Discussions were had. I just want to share a few things that happened. One person made a motion for $480,000 and another person voted no on that motion. Now that very same person who voted no made a motion for $500,000 and the person that made the motion for $480,000 voted no. So that was kind of like what the meeting was like. There was a motion for $1 million. There was a motion for all these stipulations. Bottom line, we don't have any money in our non-lapsing account and we have tremendous expenses that we're going to discuss. Now I did raise a question about what if we have more than what we presented, and Bob Tate assured me in public, Legislative Council will be able to take care of that. And that's important for us to realize. That's a concern for me. So what I wanted to do tonight, or the reason why I asked for this, is I just think we need to review in public what these additional expenses are, what they could be, and then maybe talk about a plan of attack, because I think the last thing that parents want is to find out that we're cutting budgets during this time when the money was there. And I'm normally not this I am a passionate person, but I'm normally not this passionate, but I was really, really taken back last night. And as a board, I think we have to figure out, or at least start the discussion of what we're going to do. Because I refuse to cut funding for our schools when the money was there. I mean, what a responsible act we tried to do by saying that we are going to take our surplus and put it towards expenses that help the children. I mean, if you just think of it that way, it's, to me, I mean, as a parent, I made a public comment at the end of that meeting. As a parent, I've been in this community for 26 years. I pay my taxes. I've had kids that have, my kids are raised in these schools. And if I found out that somebody decided to make all these wild motions back and forth, like it was a game. Oh, I was blown away. That spoke volumes to me. So I want us as a board to, I'm hoping that we can have a discussion of how we should move forward. And I'll just turn over the floor to you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I didn't realize, this is something that's really sticking with me. And I put in hours, and I know you all have as well. But I mean, geez, hours upon hours upon hours. Lori's put in hours. Ron's put in hours. Tanya was there last night. I mean, we just hired Tanya for this job, and she's sitting there watching that happen. So that's all I have to say about that. But I would like to have a conversation about these expenses and about how we're going to move forward. Because I think it's really important to start the conversation now so that we aren't having the conversation when it's too late. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. D'Elia. I appreciate your comments and your passion around them, because I think we were all frustrated by the process. I will open it up to comments or questions. Chairman Say.
I'm not even sure what our options are moving forward at this point. I'm as upset and flabbergasted as you are, Mr. D'Elia, and unfortunately, I feel like I sort of saw it coming based on some of the feedback and the tone that was coming from the Board of Finance prior to this. I just sort of wish that all the work that we had all done to educate them on the process and the transparency and the clarity around what we needed the funds for, it really would be sort of a no-brainer. But it seems like there's some other meaning behind this that I can't quite ascertain. So I'm just really concerned because we know we have unbudgeted expenses. I don't know what our options are for the next step. So if anyone can kind of illuminate us on what that would be, or what the Board of Finance thought that would happen in the meantime. And I just want to say that this isn't just money, our surplus money. It was money that the voters allocated to educational expenses, and that's what we're going to use the money for. So I think that's important too, to note that this was money that was budgeted and approved by the voters and the taxpayers for educational purposes. And as a taxpayer and as a parent of children in the school and as a Board of Education member, I need us to be really clear that that money should still be used for educational expenses, no matter where it's sitting at this point in time.
So what can happen next is, I know the Legislative Council is taking up discussion on their agenda for tomorrow night. I don't believe that, and in speaking with our board counsel, Matt Ritter, that the Legislative Council does not have authority to do anything different. So I'm not sure, I think they're more taking up the discussion for the future, what role the legislative council would like to have in the process. The Board of Finance is the authority of that account, according to our council. So that money, as I said earlier, would likely, we would do the end of year letter that says this is the money that's left at the end of the year. And it gets deposited into the general fund. And then the legislative council can choose to appropriate it to the
Capital non-recurring.
capital and non-recurring fund. In which case, we could request that that money be designated for COVID-related expenses. And that's something that we may want to do as a board. So those are the options that we looked into and talked about. Ms. Dukowski?
Yeah, I'd like to build on that. So basically, there's a short-term set of actions we can take, and then there's a long-term set of actions we can take. My guess, based on what I understand from the town charter required appropriations processing, is that the Board of Finance felt comfortable with the idea that money would be designated for particular expenses related to the COVID relief that we need, that would then be put into the capital non-recurring account, and that would then be available to us. It's just that it would be mediated by the town. If that's going to happen, there's a couple of subtleties in terms of the appropriations process. The first subtlety we have to be very careful of, because the first subtlety says that the legislative council is the appropriations authority for the town of Newtown. But the legislative council is able to do what's called special appropriations. Those special appropriations can be no more than 1.5 million cumulatively speaking for a particular purpose. So if we were to say, oh, it's for COVID relief, it's for COVID relief, we could find ourselves getting close to that. If we were instead saying it's for facilities, it's for PPP, so we need to be aware of that. The total amount of special appropriations that a legislative council can do is 1 mil of the grant list. That's roughly about 3 million. So there's some money in there for us to make sure that we are whole if indeed we spend all of this money for the COVID relief recovery. So the first step is to get the money designated and placed into the capital non-recurring. The second step is to make sure that we have the same process for getting to that money once it's been designated that the Board of Selectmen have for such designated monies for their projects. And that we need to be able to talk with the people who deal with the processes of pulling money out of the capital non-recurring. So we've got some level of discussion to make. That is a reasonable, given where we are, that is a reasonable option for what we have to do. It could conceivably put the legislative council in a bind, but then all of this is emergency anyway, so I wouldn't be surprised if the state waives certain things to give us some wiggle room. I don't know, but it puts the legislative council in a bind if it goes over $3 million, or if we say everything's on purpose, which is COVID-related relief. The longer term possibility would be really to revisit the whole lifetime of this process, this non-lapsing fund process, with a cross-board discussion where you talk about the interfaces between each of the different boards and the responsibilities of each of the different boards. This is sort of like software design. And that one should be I think that would be something that we should look into. We should understand what those interfaces are, who should have responsibilities, what those processes are, and who has authority. I think those are very important questions for us, especially when you've got multiple boards, is the interfaces that are always the problem. And those interfaces need to be clearly identified. So that would be more of a longer term solution, that won't help us right now, but we do need to think in terms of finding out what our options are, particularly with the capital non-recurring, access to the capital non-recurring fund. That's, from what I see, that's the obvious answer right now. There may be others, by the way.
May I jump in back in?
Yeah.
Thanks, Deb. My point, I guess, of bringing this up is that I don't want to strap Dr. Rodriguez's hands now and say, all right, we got to start being careful because the Board of Finance isn't giving us any of this money to use that we needed. I want to try to get something in place that says to Dr. Rodriguez, do what you got to do to make this work. And we're 100% behind you. And that's kind of my thinking on this. And Deb, it sounds like you're saying we have to ask the Legislative Council for for them to set up a special fund. Is that right?
Well, no, there exists a fund, there exists the process. What I would suggest is that this is yet another topic for the CIP Finance Facilities Committee to talk about. And as part of one of our meetings, we should invite people in to see where their heads are at.
We did that before. We invited in the chair of the Board of Finance. So I invited to a number of meetings. We did that.
Well, no, that was reviewing policies that we were doing. So we were asking her to review. So if we I think we need to bring them in further up in the process. But I think that's something that we as the CIP Facilities Finance, we got to come up with an acronym, maybe CFF. Should maybe meet and talk about as a part of that particular subcommittee.
Is there anything we can do now? And I'm not saying we have to, I'm not saying we have to, this is like a now thing, but I just think it's important. And as a board, is there anything we can do now?
Well,
anybody?
I think that it would be good for us to write a letter to the Legislative Council and say, what is this process that you expect us to follow? There is no process. There has not been, I think the last time we requested an appropriation from Legislative Council was when there was an oil spill, I think.
There was a special lead, I think, funding from the town fund also several years ago. I look at the special lead graphs and have interpreted it correctly. There was a process prior to the non-lapsing fund for the schools, for the town to step in and assist.
But there is no process currently outlined in writing anywhere for the Board of Ed to ask for an appropriation.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we ask the Legislative Council to be clear about what it is they expect from the Board of Education in order to access that money, and maybe be clear as a Board of Education that this is what we would like to see happen.
Yeah.
This money is now given back to the town. Does that mean that other entities can ask for this money?
It absolutely means that the money can be used for purposes other than education.
In addition to education.
Other than education, there's the same as in addition to education, yes. And my point, that's one of the things that's really sticking with me is as a taxpayer, I approved this budget for education. And now it might go to fix a pothole. And I don't know if a parent who has 3 kids in the elementary school is going to want to find out that money that they paid taxes for goes to fixing roads or something that's important, but not something that they supported by vote. But that's, I'm sorry, I got to get off my soapbox. Do I need to make a motion that that we draft a letter, or do we just say we're going to draft a letter, Michelle?
I guess, I don't know, what is the timing? I guess the piece that's important is what is the timing in terms of when we want this letter to go out? I think according to our legal counsel, they will want to close off books by September 30th. And so,
the exact date, but it's very soon.
I would suggest that maybe if they're speaking about it at the legislative council meeting tomorrow night, that we listen to the conversation and then ask for additional time, if possible, in order for us to have a discussion and to come back to them with a game plan going forward of what's the best way for the Board of Ed to handle this and to communicate what the needs are with the legislative council, so that we have some security in knowing that if in fact, because we know that there's going to be the need for monies, that the monies remain available to the Board of Ed. So that's what I would recommend, just because we know a discussion is going to happen tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And so I think asking the legislative council, we've heard your discussion. Would it be possible for us to have some additional time to understand the process and to come back to you with a plan? I don't know if that works.
and we can have a special meeting next week in order to further discuss it.
I think that's a step in the right direction, and maybe ask them if they can provide any additional information that might help us in arriving at a plan.
One thing to call out is that the unassigned fund balance right now is at its upper limit. Okay, so whether it's the money that it comes out of our balance or it's the money that's coming out of the unassigned fund balance is not necessarily a problem. And one of the things that the finance board was talking about is the fact that by charter, they're not allowed to put any more, or by regulation, I guess, they're not supposed to put any more money into the unassigned fund balance once it hits its maximum, so they have to try and transfer that to the capital non-recurring. There's all of these things that happen just with town finances, but that are available, I believe, theoretically, to the school district. But you're right, Michelle, that in terms of initiating the special appropriations request, there's nothing in the charter about the school district. And that's a big problem in terms of who has to vote to approve things, I think. But that's one of the things we need to talk about with the town, to make sure that if we have to go through the non-recurring fund balance, that we should be treated as a peer to the Board of Selectmen, that would make, there would be no reason for us to be treated as a second-class citizen.
Can I ask Tanya, do you have any thoughts on how we might approach this?
So just taking it all in right now about how the council works, how the Board of Finance works. And like they did say last night, we're right there to help you out. I don't know exactly what that means. So I'm right there with you. I think that one of the first steps, I like that idea of approaching them and coming up with a plan on how does it look, because they do have the capital non-recurring account that we use for our own projects for money that they've given us just this past year. That wouldn't be a problem for them to transfer that money into that account and keep the expenses that come up. I think that's a great step.
That's still through the legislative council process though, right? There, we would have to go to them like we do the Board of Finance to ask for money that they would transfer, so they would take that money, put it in that account so we can.
Well, they would designate it and then put it into that account. So they would designate it for PPE, they would designate it for facilities.
But it's all capital?
Well, that's what that's the name. Yeah, but that's a misnomer. I mean, it's not.
So not staffing or anything like that?
Pardon? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just reading, I'm looking at the policy of the Board of Finance cost, and the definition of the capital and non-recurring fund is a multi-year fund where funding can accumulate, enabling the town to acquire larger capital assets on the favorable expense. I don't.
Okay, maybe that's not the correct fund, but.
Well, I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that if we're asking them to put the money that we have designated for educational expenses into some sort of an account, then we're not then barred from the way, there's not some technicality to what exactly we for. So I'm not sure that's right.
Can I ask another question, please?
I have a follow-up to that, but.
Oh, go ahead, Deb.
So we'll do Deb Zukowski, Deb Lideline, and then Mr. Delia.
Thanks.
Mr. Zukowski?
You know, normally I would, because I'm very word-centric, I would have totally agreed with you, but we had a conversation about, with the board, or there was we had a conversation with the Board of Finance about the fact that in their fund policy document, they called our non-lapsing fund a capital fund, and they put it in the same category as the capital non-recurring fund. And I called out and said, well, one of the things we would want to do is special education. You know, so that is both potentially recurring and that is certainly not capital. And, you know, and so they said, oh, that's no big deal because it's just where we're putting. So I'm not sure that, yeah, but they're, so I agree, totally agree that we need to make sure that the fund that we place our money into is operational, it's personnel, it's safety, and it's not necessarily capital.
Okay.
Sideline?
I want to make sure that we have something concrete and in writing. It can be with a discussion and, you know, it was a promise or it was a no big deal. It's got to be concrete and it's got to be in writing so that we don't have these issues where we understand the process goes a certain way, but then it changes and it's no longer clear to us what the pathway is. I think it's got to be concrete. It's got to be, you know, definitive what the process is, what the steps are that we have to take, what the timetable is, so that we can make sure that we have access to the funds that were approved for education.
So, excuse me, I just said to Tanya, we should go back pre-non-lapsing to find out who did we write to so that Tanya could write. Because I believe Ron would write the letter to the legislative council of your surplus fund. I think it was to the legislative council. Okay. So that would be we almost revert to that because we don't have the other. So.
Mr. Delia.
And then this is a question for either Lori or Tanya. There's been discussion of like 800,000. We already have $800,000. So does that even? Can you explain that? Because I'm hearing that, and not here in this meeting. I've heard it over the course of today that we already have, and they said it at the Board of Finance meeting last night that we already have $800,000. And where do we have that money? Is that somewhere? I'm being honest, like
it really became very confusing and shifted in the language that was being used. And I think we were very upfront. We couldn't have been more transparent. I just want to point that out. And you heard me last night, Dan, say, I mean, they really did ask us to put this together. And how many conversations we had, not just to come and say, here's the surplus, but also what kinds of expenses or expenditures do we anticipate? And that's what we did. I'm sorry.
So Dan, the amount that Bob came up with was 832,000. And that was made up of 207,000 from the undesignated non-lapsing account, because we have the 63 that's designated for special ed. And the 245 that Ron had on his sheet, just to show some transparency regarding some potential savings.
And the 340,000.
So there's,
Is it 380 or 3? I'm sorry, 380, that's why it doesn't.
yeah, we have a grant from the state, an entitlement grant for 380,000. So he included that in there as well. That, you know, we use for something, it's not.
Meaning that would offset the.
1.5 million.
Exactly.
So he'd wipe out our non-lapsing account.
Right.
He hold us to these savings, potential savings, and not really look at the costs. So I didn't.
Right, so the potential savings, the 245 is potential, that's not real, but the 380 and the 207 is real, as far as I can understand, right?
Well, I follow up on the entitlement grant. Is that the one where we're supposed to put aside 10% or some?
No, that was CARES.
Okay.
That was CARES for the private school.
And the bottom line, I'm sorry, Michelle, may I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
The bottom line is we're not like trying to do some fancy maneuver here. We're just trying to make sure that the schools are properly funded. That's all we're doing. We're just trying to protect and make sure that the schools are properly funded. And that's,
Oh, and can I just say, I was also disappointed in the point in the meeting when I thought it was a reasonable request. At least let us know how the money, and I get it. I understand one of the members thought it was micromanaging, but if it got us to a place where they felt comfortable, I really thought
I thought we were done. I thought we were done there too.
You know, that we were being reasonable. We all agreed it was fair, even though we didn't want to speak on every board member's behalf, but if it meant, right, we figured you would all agree. And then I don't know what happened after that. I was a blur after that because that was really something I thought we were landing in a really good place. And that was something that the chair brought up as an amendment. And I don't know what happened after that. I think it's too bad. It's disappointing, I have to say. I lost a lot of sleep on this last night. Really did.
Yeah, we put a lot of work into that. Okay, so Michelle, are you going to go to the meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, I will. I think it would be good if all board members went to the meeting. I think that would be a good thing.
Okay, I'll be there.
It's at 7:30.
Is it still virtual?
I think so.
I don't know. I think they might be
Yeah.
in person.
Do you just confirm?
Yeah. So how about if we work on a potential letter to send, and then have a meeting, schedule a meeting for next week for follow-up from the Legislative Council, what we hear there, and what next steps we might ask of the Legislative Council. I do want to finish by saying that I think we've been sent a message pretty loud and clear at this point that, and that's through the budget cut of the $100,000 contingency that happened last year that was supposed to be meant for that non-lapsing account for the special education portion. And then the action that happened the non-action that happened last night, that we should not be depending on the non-lapsing fund for planning purposes at all. I mean, it would be great if we could work something out, but we were blasted at a meeting months ago for expressing an ounce of doubt that the Board of Finance might not put the money into the non-lapsing fund. And yet, here we are today, and so I think we've been sent the message loud and clear, and I'm not, I guess we just should not plan on using the non-lapsing account. And if it comes to pass that we can, that's great, but
that's where I think we are.
Can I say it was also done during the most difficult year of all? That's what I think was the most disheartening for me personally. That, you know, all we're trying to do, we're trying to hold up a district, students and families and staff, and I just don't understand it.
Right, and Lori, to piggyback on what you and Michelle said, the sad thing is that we said that we would come to our board, come back to the Board of Ed and try to get everybody to agree to the fact that if we didn't use the money towards COVID, that we would apply it towards next year's budget to reduce the tax burden on the taxpayers.
Right.
So I mean, it just didn't even make sense. You know, and the way the meeting ended with, they're going to write a letter. They're going to write a letter. That's how they're going to support the Board of Education, with a letter.
Yeah.
I just, you know, it blew me away. I mean, the money's there for education if you need it for this emergency. If you don't, hey, if stuff works out and it's great and you have a surplus, hey, we're going to apply it towards next year's budget. So we're going to reduce the burden on the taxpayers. I mean,
All right, I
sorry.
think, yeah, we need to finish up, and because we have at least two more things to do. All right, so Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, I'm not going to be quite as pessimistic. I'm not willing to give up on having the non-lapsing fund be some level of a long-term planning tool. I think that what happened is that at each of the boards unilaterally decided it was what they wanted it to be. That does not mean that if you actually talk amongst the board and come to a common agreement that you couldn't get something which is more understood with clearer processes, understood responsibilities and understood interfaces. So I'm willing to put in whatever amount of work is necessary to give it one last try, knowing fully that it may be a fool's errand, but I think it would be a fool's errand that would be well worth the attempt.
All right. Okay, let's wrap up this conversation. I will try to schedule a meeting for next week. And is that it? Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the minutes, the approval of the minutes. Thank you. Of August 25th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of August 25th, 2020.
All right. Mr. D'Elia makes the motion. Second. Ms. Harriman states seconds, and let's see. We'll just move on to the discussion portion with Ms. Zukowski. You had some.
Yep. Three very, very quick things. Basically a bunch of typos. Number one is on page 5, it says we should go for the average of the last 3 years of overages. This is speaking about special ed. And it says 100,000. The average is actually 400,000. And then Ms. Harriman suggested keeping it to 100,000 as opposed to going for the 400,000. On page 6, it said Ms. Zukowski was there, said there could be unexpected flare-ups and asked if we have plans for testing teams, and those we will not, and those we will be playing. It was really just testing our own teams. We're not testing students from other districts. The last one was just simply the correction from the previous minutes really didn't make it in that what was asked was, and you know, the email was that the request was to change the, well, the way it was said is allow 50% of the students to be 3 feet apart when wearing masks. The requested change was really pointing out that with the hybrid plan, students could be 6 feet apart, thereby meeting social distance requirements and still have the mask on, which would even exceed the CDC social distance requirements. And that was all of this was sent in text fairly clearly, I think, to both Michelle and Kathy.
So you'd like to make all those changes to the minutes?
as represented in the email that I sent out, yes, and paraphrased here.
Does anybody have objections? I mean, I know you were, I don't know how you feel about changing what you said.
I'm not even sure where you were in the minutes. I was trying to follow along, but I didn't get it in advance, so I don't know.
Okay, well, we can keep it that you agreed with my suggestion to change the last three, change the $400,000 was a place. I was just being logically consistent when I was making the change for you.
Can you tell me again?
Page 5, I think it's just a few paragraphs down. So what it had been is we should go for the average of the last 3 years of coverage, overages. $100,000 is a good place to start. The average of the last 3 years is $400,000. Ms. Harriman Sykes agreed to keep it at 100,000. It's an excellent point, ... So it's just, you know, if I'm saying if we're going to change it to 400,000.
Would you like to wait until the next meeting? I mean, we can table it.
It's fine. I don't think we need to spend any more time discussing it.
Okay, if there's no objection to making the changes that have been read, that has been sent to approve the minutes with the suggestions. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. And that brings us to public participation.
Two people still hanging on, Bob and Ann.
Well, I would like to congratulate Tanya on her first meeting with the Board of Ed. Well, I mean, in her new position, she's obviously been. Yeah, it's after last night's meeting, so.
And Tanya showed up after last night's meeting.
No, that should say a lot, right?
I'm very proud of Tanya.
I did ask her if she signed her contract yet.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn, but don't go anywhere, Dan, because we've got to do a non-meeting. All right, entertaining the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Ms. Ledley makes a motion, Ms. Herman states seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Now I have to figure out how we're going to do a non-meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye, Bob.
Do you want me
Bye
to,
bye. Good night.
Bye, Bob.
you want me to call Dan?
I'm hitting stop live stream.
Yeah.